Good evening, residents of Everett, Washington. I'd like to call to order the Everett City Council meeting of November 8th, 2023. The City Council meets all requirements of the State of Washington Open Public Meetings Act. Community members are welcome to join our meetings in person, remote, on Zoom, or by calling in. For those who wish to participate in the future on Zoom, you'll find the instructions to register for public comment on the City of Everett website under the City Council Department. Please note, we do not allow comments on any kind of campaigning, whether for or against ballot measures or candidates running for office. We also do not accept comments focused on personal matters that are unrelated to city business. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Franklin. Here. Vice President Toohey.
Here.
Councilmember Ryan.
Here.
Councilmember Vogely.
Here.
Councilmember Schwab.
Excused?
Councilmember Fossey.
Excused?
Councilmember Zarlingo.
Here.
President Stonecipher.
Here. Councilmember Toohey, would you please lead us in the flag salute? Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And Councilmember Ryan, would you please read the land acknowledgement?
Yes. The City Council wishes to acknowledge the original inhabitants of this place, the Stahopes people and their successors, the Tulalip tribes, who since time immemorial have hunted, fished, and gathered on these lands and waters. We respect their sovereignty, their right to self-determination, and honor their sacred spiritual connection with these lands and waters. We will strive to be honest about our past mistakes and bring forth a future that includes their people, their voices, and their stories to form a more just and equitable society.
Thank you, and I'm impressed that you have that memorized. Very good. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes of the November 1st meeting?
Councilmember Ryan so moves.
Second.
And we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Vice President Toohey.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely.
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo.
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. And good evening, Mayor Franklin.
Good evening, President Stonecipher and council members and community. We have a long meeting. I'll keep this very brief. I just wanted to share, I'm very excited about the briefing that we're going to get on the Riverfront project. I had the opportunity to tour it, as I shared with council a few weeks ago, and I know the team's going to share more, but we're going to hear about replacing the cinema with a new recreation anchor tenant, and I'm very, very excited about it. I know our community's going to be excited about. So this has been a project that has been such a long time coming, and we have invested a lot of time and energy and money, and the community has as well, and I think this is really a fabulous placemaking. So excited to hear what's coming, and that's all. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I'm going to, because we have, Mr. Hall is going to give us a briefing on the Waits Motel. I'm going to call on you first because before we go to council or to public comments, because they may want to comment on that. So if you don't mind.
Sure, you surprised me.
I'm sorry.
I'm ready to go, though.
Very good, thank you.
This is intended to also answer some of the emailed questions from you, Councilmember Vogely. This is a summary of information from several sources, not all strictly legal, so there may be some issues if you have detailed follow-up questions that we need to get back to you in emailed answers from other staff members or next week, but I'll answer the questions that I can that may come up. Just as a background, the City Council passed the ordinance condemning the property for blight in August. The city filed a petition for condemnation in Superior Court on August 28th. Once we make more progress, and I know Councilmember Vogely, you had searched the Odyssey portal, which is great. That's the software at the county that allows you to look at all the filings in any case in the county. And you saw that there hasn't been much happening recently, and that's true. Once we make more progress on relocation, the city will be making additional filings in Superior Court to move the case along towards trial. Just to remind everyone about process basics, the city does not own the motel now and does not have control of the motel. That only occurs after a trial, which may be months away, or if the city and the owner come to an agreement before trial, which may or may not occur. This means that as of now, the motel is still private property under private control and is not the city's property, which is relevant to some of the issues that have come up recently. With the condemnation process started, the city's first priority, as we've said several times, is relocating the long-term residents. As I described in earlier council meetings, the city has obligations under various laws to help residents get relocated, and the city is doing that. The city is contracted with a relocation specialist, Common Street, which handles relocation for a number of public projects around the state. Common Street, along with a staff member from our community development department, has met with each resident so far to develop an assessment of their particular needs. Additional outreach from Common Street will be happening very soon, within the next few days. You'll be seeing, along with that, an amendment to their professional services agreement to complete the relocation. Probably November 29, I believe, is currently scheduled. For the reasons described in the ordinance the council passed, the motel is not a safe living situation. We really would like to relocate residents as soon as possible. But to be clear, the city is not asking any resident to leave the motel before we have a relocation option ready for them. I understand that the owner this past week, and some of you may have seen this letter, I know that they gave it to Common Street, and I've seen it. The owner provided a letter to the residents entitled "A Termination of Occupancy at Waits Motel." It purports to require residents to vacate the premises no later than midnight, November 8, which is tonight. A couple of important aspects of that letter. First, it is still a private business. The owner is free to operate the motel within legal confines. This is a private landlord-tenant dispute between the owner and the residents. We are not involved in that. It's not the role of the city to provide the residents advice in this matter, and at least one sentence in that notice is just wrong. The notice states, "The City of Everett has filed a petition for condemnation of the premises in Snohomish County Superior Court, case number blah, blah." This is notice that the city intends to exercise the power of eminent domain to condemn the premises, which in part requires the owner to cease operating the premises. That's just not true. Because it suggests that the city is somehow forcing the owner to cease operating now, and the city is not doing that. As I described before, the city is making great efforts to relocate residents, not prematurely push them out. Of course, once the city takes control of the property, the motel will cease operations because the city is not a motel or apartment complex operator, but by then the residents will be relocated with the help of our relocation specialist. But until that time, the owner is free, just like any owner of any establishment of that sort, to operate his business in accordance with applicable law. Happy to answer the questions that I can.
Thank you. Questions from council first. Councilmember Ryan.
So the residents are or are not required to move out by midnight tonight?
Not,
Do they know that?
hopefully,
Does the city have a responsibility to share that information
I
with
believe
them?
our community development folks have passed that message on. We have contacts there, and I know at least the main person there that has been communicating with this, the person that provided the letter, has been informed that that is not the case. But this is a matter between the landlord and the residents, and if the landlord is going to misrepresent this, there's not a lot we can do to intervene in that, but we have tried to pass the message on to tenants that this is not the city of Everett requiring this.
I need to gather my thoughts for a little bit.
Any other questions?
I will, but I will also wait.
You've got your council comment too. Okay. I think, thank you, Mr. Hall. So we will move on now to public comment. So Angie, do we have anyone signed up to speak for public comment this evening?
Yes, we do. I'll first ask Luciana to come to the podium.
And for those who are in chambers tonight, there's, I believe there's a little light board there. I will turn on the light when you start speaking. And when it turns yellow, you have 30 seconds remaining.
I sent you an email earlier today asking for 5 minutes and I didn't get a response. And so I'm wondering if
You sent it to me or to?
Brenda Stone Cipher.
Oh, I'm sorry, I have not checked I was at work all day today, so I did not check my email, but you may have 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I may not need all of that, but since
I'm sorry,
the-
you have to state your name and, and city of residence for the record.
Of
Thank you.
course. My name is Luisana Hernandez, and I live here in the city of Everett. Since the barbaric and bloody inception of this country, white people in positions of power have forced assimilation. With their great white pride, they engaged in the cultural erasure of those they deemed uncivilized. BIPOC were forced to place faith in the unnatural culture that's cemented in white nationalism, capitalism, coercion, and compliance. Now, prior to colonizers, my people were living in harmony with the earth and within our communities. We weren't simply surviving as many of us are now, we were thriving. And even then, we understood that the laws of white men are as fundamentally flawed as their makers, and not in a million years would any of you qualify as saviors. Many BIPOC have fought and died to bring light to the fragility of your power, and even our most peaceful leaders and advocates were met with a violent end. Now, our Constitution was written by slave owners. The systems we operate within, the laws we are governed by, and the revered occupation of law enforcement are all rooted in white supremacy. Now, not only does the 13th Amendment allow for the slavery of those who are criminally prosecuted and incarcerated, but BIPOC are still disproportionately represented in jails and in prisons. And despite the lies some of you may tell yourselves to sleep at night, you are no different than the colonizers that came before you. You benefit from white privilege, exploit, control, and manipulate what and who you can, all the while claiming to represent the diverse people in this city. And you act as though you know what's best for everyone and speak as though you've earned the right to lead. And in the event you've never been told, winning an election doesn't make you worthy. And your position does not earn you respect. And I can't respect people that systematically silence and gaslight others into thinking that they have no power. It's a tactic you've used for centuries to diminish people you see as beneath you, people that you've worked to decimate and scatter, which brings me to the topic of the Waits Motel. You knowingly disrupted a diverse and marginalized community on the mend by condemning their home and leaving them without recourse. Residents received an eviction notice on the 3rd of this month, stating that the city intends to exercise the power of eminent domain to condemn the premises, which in part requires the owner to cease operating the premises. This is notice that the owner is terminating your tenancy. So when the topic of eviction came up, David Hall told a reporter from the Herald, "That's not going to happen." That's a quote. That's not going to happen. What this suggests is that your legal team is either ignorant of the laws or lied to obscure knowingly negligent actions, because as we all know, optics impact public opinion. And I've heard that some of you are angry with the mayor and I'm angry about these evictions, which makes sense because this is a really bad look for you. The truth is your feelings matter less than the community members who are actively experiencing harm and trauma because of your decisions. Now, every single person on this council, save Liz Vogely, has directly contributed to these circumstances, and for this, you must be held accountable. You looked into the eyes of those directly impacted and decided that you knew better. I literally watched you, one by one, lie to yourselves and the community about how great life was going to be for these residents, just so you could sleep at night. And we were right not to believe you. Now, whether or not you have any power to prevent the owner from evicting folks, this is the reality of their situation. And they are experiencing trauma. I know this firsthand because they're my neighbors. Now, I haven't heard anybody at all mention that you might pay for counseling, because housing insecurity is real and it is traumatic. And so while you are moving at whatever pace you can, these folks are left with the reality of the situation, which is they're supposed to be out by midnight. And what are they to do then? In the interim, until you get it together, what are they supposed to do? They're supposed to post up on a corner, wait for you to reach out? How are you going to help these people? It's not your responsibility, but I don't know, it seems like you should feel obligated.
Thank you. You'll have to wrap up now. Your time's up.
Ruben, if you could please come to the podium.
Council President?
Yes.
If I could just make a couple comments. First of all, of course, we are all very concerned with the residents at the Waits. I think it's important that we separate the city's actions from the owner's actions. This is the same owner that is, whose behavior has brought us to the point where the city had to condemn it because it is such a blight and because he has created such an unsafe situation for his residents. We are doing everything we can to expedite relocation. It would have been nice had the owner come to us and said, gee, we understand you've got relocation expertise and resources. Thank you. I want you to help me relocate your residents. But it's been just the opposite. So it is unfortunate that the owner has sent out this letter. I don't know there's a lot we can do about it, but this is the owner, not the city, who has caused this problem. And our community development folks will be in contact with residents. We'll be doing what we can, but I do think it's important to separate the actions from the owner, who apparently does not care much about his residents, from those of the city, who is providing resources to try and get them into better housing.
Thank you.
Ruben, if you would please state your full name and city of residence, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Hello, my name is Ruben Trujillo. I live in the Northwest District. I am simply here to say the Waits can't wait any longer. They need to be rehoused. You have put them into a situation that has caused them stress, drama, trauma, and all kinds of other ailments that we are unaware of at this point. You know, it's difficult to take pride in the city when certain things like this are reoccurring with the no sit, no lie ordinance and the way that the city continues to look down on those who are downtrodden and in need of help. I do really love this city, and I have seen it over the past few years progress into, or I should say degress, into a city that is in need of help, in need of more resources, in need of someone to be more understanding. That's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you. If Kelly could please come to the podium. And if you could please state your full name, city of residence, and you have 5 minutes to speak.
Yes, it's Kelly Johnson, and I live in Everett, Washington. I also work at the hospital. Hopefully, I am a face that you guys remember. And it's kind of crazy to think about how I was here last July. If you would have asked me last July if I would be back here again with the same message that I had then regarding the hospital that I work at, I would say I would really hope that's not the case, and hopefully Providence has the same priorities that I and other nurses have regarding the care that we provide to this community. Some things that were said here the first couple times that I was here was, and the one thing that stuck out in my mind the most, that still sticks out in my mind, is that things were gonna have to get worse before they get better. And I remember repeatedly asking with different scenarios, is this how bad it's gonna have to get before it gets better? And I remember one of those scenarios was, is a patient gonna have to go into cardiac arrest in our ER lobby before things get better? And if you get the Everett Heralds, then you know, and you read the story, that someone did go into cardiac arrest in our lobby, a woman who was in her 40s, and her family has formally filed a lawsuit, and so now that person actually has a name. But this is just one person who has a name. There are a lot of other patients that have had similar experiences and outcomes specifically related to the staffing issues that do not have a name yet. And so why does that bring me here tonight? Well, I, along with another nurse on the union bargaining team, are here to let you know that we had hopes this contract negotiation, that the easiest thing that we could come to an agreement about would be language that would set a standard of staffing and a standard of patient care that we would be able to provide to the community. Providence has said over and over and over that this is a priority for them, and yet they have now pushed this one issue into an issue where we had to make the difficult decision to go on strike. Strikes have been a big thing this year, but I think the difference between our strike and most other strikes that have occurred this year in other industries is other industries has been mainly about wages and trying to bring those up to match the cost of living. We would love wages, but our main thing is that we just want to be able to have a set standard of a work environment so that we can provide, as nurses, the best care possible to the patients, and that patients get the best care possible that they deserve and that they're paying for. We are both here to ask everyone to support us on the strike line, and that means coming up and coming out and joining us. It also means hopefully supporting us through your social media accounts, or even reaching out to Providence leadership as well and asking them to reconsider their position on the staffing language that we are really trying hard to get into our contract. I think it's safe to say that for nurses, bargaining is no longer about wages. It really is trying to get language that provides a work environment that makes healthcare what it should be. Hopefully I do not have to ever be back here again to bring this issue to the Everett City Council or to the community. Hopefully this will be the last time. Thank you.
Thank you. And Julie, if you could come to the podium. And please state your full name and city
I'm
residence.
Julie Bynum, and I live in Arlington, Washington. I'm also a nurse at Providence Hospital, and I work in the float resource department in that hospital. So on November 3rd, I'm sure everyone has heard that our union, UFCW 3000, filed an intent to strike, given a 10-day notice for the nurses of that hospital. I was one of the 7 nurses on that team to help make that decision to go on strike. Ever since I've made that decision, it's been a very emotional time for me. Striking is not something that nurses take lightly. It's not something that we want to do. In this particular instance, we're really striving for a safe staffing language in our contract that will incentivize Providence to hire more nurses and protect our patients. I'll read you what else I wrote. So I've been questioning my decision ever since, and then every time I think about that, I'm reminded of that woman that died in our lobby, and that made headlines. But some other things that didn't make headlines are the fact that we had a 10-month-old baby that came into the hospital with difficulty breathing. The parents waited for many hours and then returned home, only to return with a baby that was almost dead. We had stabilized that baby, went to another facility. We don't know anything more about it. We have many people waiting in our lobbies for hours. We have boarders in the ER that are not getting the care they need because they need to be up on the floors. We have to close floors down because there's not enough nurses to staff those floors. So those people sit in the lobby or sit in our ER, the boarders do, and take up ER space. And the other patients just sit out in the lobby waiting for care. The boarders aren't getting the care that they need in the ER. They need to be on the floors where their care really starts and where we have the equipment to take care of them. Department of Health has been in multiple times and has come very close to shutting us down at times. 665 nurses have left Providence since that time. That's a third of the nurses last year. Our Sentinel events have more than doubled during this time, and the year is not over. My job as a nurse is to, number one, make sure my patients are safe. Number two, it's to advocate for them, to be their voice when they can't speak for themselves. when they're sick and vulnerable. So I come to you guys today to ask you to support us in our bid for safe staffing, to get the language that we need, that our patients deserve, that this community deserves in our contract. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, if Liz could please come to the podium. And please state your full name and city of residence.
My name is Liz Stenning. I live in Lake Forest Park. Hello. Hi, everyone. My name is Liz Stenning, Executive Director with the Downtown Everett Association, and thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I want to express our support for keeping the Aqua Sox in Everett. Just recently at the downtown trick-or-treating event, Webley made an appearance. The kids were overjoyed to get their pictures taken with Webley, and it was just a really great event, especially because he was there. And last summer, I was at a game, and I saw how much the Aqua Sox bring pride to the city, and they provide such an affordable and fun entertainment for families. And so what we understand is based on information provided by the city that the current stadium does not meet the new baseball league requirements, and it either needs to get updated or rebuilt elsewhere. We've also been told that no action could likely mean the Aqua Sox would leave Everett. So we understand the proposed study will look at rebuilding the stadium in its current location or move to a location close to downtown Everett. We are in support of either option to keep the Aqua Sox in Everett. If the stadium moves closer to downtown Everett, this would likely increase business for downtown restaurants and entertainment venues and bring a lot more people to downtown. At the same time, two large venues located near each other could have impacts. Depending upon the location, they could even eliminate opportunities for high-density, mixed-use, or transit-oriented development. So a thorough study of economic, environmental, infrastructure, parking, and traffic impacts should be conducted. Extensive outreach with property owners and businesses will be of great importance to ensure a successful outcome. And a location close to downtown could also provide a unique opportunity to improve the current pedestrian experience with innovative urban design treatments in coordination with the future light rail station and existing transportation infrastructure. And I just want to say that the Aqua Sox, the team, are great partners to us, and we just really hope they can stick around. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, Maury, could you please come to the podium? Please state your full name and city of residence.
Maury Troutman, 816 35th Street here in Everett. So, Madam Mayor, Madam President, Council. My intention for speaking is to encourage you as a city to endorse the expenditure to study the feasibility to engage in building a new baseball stadium in Everett. This stadium will have to be in compliance with the new Major League Baseball compliance rules. As previously stated, where we're at now doesn't qualify, not that it can't be made to be that way, but my partner's son, Andy Atwood, is a professional baseball player with the Chicago White Sox organization. And prior to that, he played for 5 years of collegiate baseball with Oregon State and the University of Texas. Kathy and I have had the opportunity to travel all over the country watching baseball, from the Cape Cod League to spring training in Arizona. We visited many cities, many small towns, and witnessed the effects and contribution these professional level baseball facilities have on the vitality and character of the communities. One such community, and I believe some of the members from a team from Everett went there, was Kannapolis, North Carolina. Andy played for the Cannonballers, as they're known, in Kannapolis. It's a small blue-collar town in North Carolina. It was historically a mill town. It was textile mills, unlike timber mills, but it was the home of Cannon Towels, and hence Kannapolis. So, with the offshoring of the textile industry, the town went into a lengthy depression, if it sounds a little familiar. The old mill sites were eventually bought up and repurposed into a public-private research facility, currently housing numerous universities and private enterprises. Adjacent to this, to the research facility, and adjacent to downtown, in between them is a public square area that now is occupied by a new baseball facility that has become the centerpiece of the town. On game days, it's filled with noisy sports fans, but not being used for baseball. It's open to the citizens of the community as a city park. At any time of the day, you can see families and friends using the facilities and walking and running, picnicking, dog walking. Summer times bring evening movies to the big screen to be enjoyed by the townspeople. It truly is a multi-use facility. It's a given that with the new Major League mandate, the Aqua Sox are faced with some type of move. I would encourage the council to engage this opportunity to bring vitality to our community and maintain the continuance of professional baseball in our town. Thank you.
Thank you. And Katrina, could you please come to the podium? Please state your full name and city of residence.
Katrina Kuntz, and I live in Marysville, Washington. And I'm here to ask the City Council to approve the contract to do a study on the potential locations for the Aqua Sox baseball stadium. As a lifelong resident, born and raised here in Everett, I believe it is crucial to keep the Aqua Sox here in town. Now, in the mid-'80s, when the Everett Giants came here, it was a huge win for this city. It brought affordable family fun to the community. And on a personal note, when I got my driver's license in 1986, that was one of the first places that I was allowed to go because it wasn't south of 41st. And I got to drive my friends, and it was great because there were no parents. So, over the years, as the team has evolved and changed, it has become the Aqua Sox. Not a summer has gone by without going to the park to catch a game. It was more cost-effective than going to the movies or any other events down near Seattle. I have incredible memories watching my son run the bases after games, or going to the Aqua Sox camps every summer. This has had a huge influence on him and his love of the sport. He loved everything about the team and the sport. And a proud mom moment, he is currently a sophomore at Wenatchee Valley College on a baseball scholarship. The great thing about sporting events like the Aqua Sox is you don't have to actually be a baseball fan to enjoy the games. It's a shared social experience. It's an event that brings people together. Plus, it does have huge impact on the local businesses, whether it's dinner before the game, drinks after, or becoming a new customer to a local company because you saw the banner up above your seats. And also on a professional level, I currently work for another sporting team here in the city, right down the hill, and I love the partnership with the Aqua Sox. We do share season ticket holders, we share some sponsors, and we definitely share strategies. We do support each other. So this study is critical to keep the Aqua Sox here in Everett. It is a vital part of our community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. That concludes our in-person public commenters, but we do have an individual who would like to speak on items 17 and 18 after the briefings, if possible.
Okay. We can accommodate that. Thank you. All right, that's all for public comments. So now we'll move on to council comments and liaison reports, starting with Vice President Toohey.
Thank you, Council President. First of all, I want to thank everybody who came this evening. Your heartfelt comments are well taken. And as far as the residents of the Waits Motel, I'm certainly hope that the city can be involved at making sure that they don't get evicted tonight somehow. I know it's not we're not evicting them, but I feel responsible for making sure that they're not on the streets tonight. So I would like an update from that. And I think the nurses have left, but very unfortunate set of circumstances at our hospital. And they've had to make a very difficult decision. So I do support safe staffing, and I hope that they can come to some kind of conclusion that will work for everybody. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Ryan.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody who commented tonight. It's always great to have folks show up and join and share what's on their hearts and minds. Thank you for the update too about Waste Hotel. I'm surprised to hear that since August, there's only been one point of contact with the people who are living at the Waits Hotel by the Common Street group that we had contracted with. So, and that the next point of contact isn't until late November. I don't believe that wasn't what we were led to believe was part of the contract.
But late November is when the next phase of the contract will come back to you, but we've notified them that they have a lot of money left on the first PSA, and they should be moving forward expeditiously with the money remaining on that contract. So they're not going to not be doing any work until the contract comes back to you. In fact, I believe that next week they'll be doing more work.
But since August, they've only had one point of contact with the people living there?
I'd have to check with them. I know our social workers that work for the city have also had contact with them, and I just can't give you numbers on how many contacts have been total.
Councilmember Ryan, I could add that there was a series of days when the Common Street folks were in town and in partnership with our community development staff, spoke with each resident. And I know that at least in the last week, there have been numerous phone calls with a couple of residents and other community development staff about, certainly about the current letter that David spoke to and that current situation. And I would expect that there have been other conversations, but just to expand, I guess, on what David said.
I got a few more. 1 minute. So when we signed that contract and when it was proposed to us, it was presented as more hand-holding than what I'm hearing tonight, and more contact and more help and more assistance. And we were assured that the people that were living there were going to be taken care of, and that's not what I'm hearing tonight.
So the latter half of what you said is absolutely true. That is the goal. The initial professional services agreement was sort of that assessment step. And I apologize if the impression was made that that was kind of an all-encompassing through the entire process. So that initial PSA got us kind of that first step. So what we're waiting on, and I don't know actually if folks, I don't know if there were staff contacts today or yesterday on it, but that second PSA that David spoke to that would come back to you, that would basically set out the cost and scope for the rest of that multi-month relocation process. So I know we were clear that it would take several months to make all of that happen.
Can I just add a question? And it's a question for you, David Hall. My understanding is the complexity around this is that even though we have set in motion this condemnation, we set it in motion, but we don't own the property yet. We don't control the property yet. The property is still owned and controlled by the owner, which has honestly caused the condemnation in the first place. And so we can't technically just go in there and do whatever we want. It's always in collaboration because it's private property. And so our community development team has been working really hard on this because that's what social workers do. They're very passionate about this. But there's this full legal process that has to happen for us to actually access and I guess be more aggressive and assertive in our actions. And so up until now, it's been more of a negotiation between the community development team and the owners that live there to say, hey, we'd like to start working with your residents. We want to help them. But correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're correct.
I understand there's a legal process. I'm worried about the human process, and that if folks aren't receiving the message that they don't have to be out by midnight tonight, then Common Street won't have the opportunity to help rehouse people and help people find a place to live.
If folks are really concerned, I know that so we can't give them legal advice, but like the Landlord Tenants Union is a good resource that has emergency response. So that would be, I think, a potential recommendation for folks that are kind of looking for solutions in the next 5 hours.
Should they call 211 maybe?
That too, yeah, sure.
So I'm still not clear how it's private property and there's a private owner, so it's a private decision, but their notice to vacate doesn't have standing. I'm not understanding that.
Well, I don't know if it has standing or not. It's an odd situation because the owner, first of all, their claim that they're required to do this by the city is just false. I think we all understand that. But they have been walking a tightrope between operating a motel, which is licensed for short-term stay, and a residential apartment complex, which they are not, but they've been treating it as such. So whether they are subject to the Landlord-Tenant Act like an apartment building owner would be or not is, I think, a legal issue that we would need to look into. Frankly, this letter caught us by surprise. Nobody expected the owner would suddenly try to evict all of these people who've been living there for quite a long time. And I don't know, I'll just be honest, I don't know what the answer is, what the legal standing is. We were surprised that the owner would try to boot them all out immediately. It's not what we had planned for. It doesn't fit with our plans for relocating people. We have resources we can bring to bear on this to help people find better housing. And we've been in contact with the owner, kind of asking what the heck. So we're doing what we can. The city has resources. We don't want these people to be out in the street. I doubt that people will be taking bags of their stuff and moving out to the curb tonight, and we'll do what we can to make sure that doesn't happen.
So for an eviction process, there's usually law enforcement that shows up to the sheriff's
Yep.
office. Is the sheriff's office aware that the letter doesn't have any standing and that they should not be proceeding with kicking people out tonight?
I don't know what the sheriff's office is aware of. I would be shocked if they believe that this is a valid eviction letter and that they're going to be there because, as you know, with your legal background, eviction is a process that takes several months. And you can't just send a letter one
Yeah,
day
so,
and
yeah.
ask the sheriff to be there a week later to help you evict people. It's just not how it
Yeah,
works.
eviction takes a long time, and I'm going to ask Chief DeRoos to just follow up with the sheriff's office immediately. I'm sure that's probably who you're texting right now, to see what that process looks like. But whenever eviction notices are handed, it takes the sheriff quite a long time to actually evict people. There's no way that the sheriff is going there tonight to evict people without notifying our police department.
And I guess one last thing, if I were a resident living there and I received this letter, I didn't have access to know who to call or that there's this whole legal process that we're discussing here tonight, I'd be scared. I'd be terrified, and I wouldn't know my rights. I wouldn't know that there wasn't a sheriff's officer coming in by midnight to kick me out. So I'm worried that there's people there that don't understand their rights, don't understand that they can stay and that they should stay, and that they belong, that it's okay for them to stay there, and that there is help out there. And I feel like since the city put this ball in motion, we have a responsibility to do whatever we can.
So Jennifer, will you please reach out while we're here to our Community Development Director and our lead social worker to see what contact has been made with the residents since the letter, to assure you all that we've had contact with all the residents that have answered their door.
Thank you. Next for my comments, I want to thank our nurses who stopped by tonight. I do stand in solidarity with their efforts, and I would join on the picket line like I did join at the informational picket in 2021, but I'll be out of town during that exact time frame for the National League of Cities Conference, and regret that I won't be able to participate. I want them to know that I will be supporting in any way that I can remotely, and just to mention that safe staffing saves lives. I want to thank everybody who voted yesterday. Last I checked, it looked like it was about 26% of the ballots had been returned, so it'd be great to increase those numbers to help increase help increase participation in our representative democracy. In the spirit of free and fair elections, I'd be curious if the city or the city council can do anything to limit the amount of independent expenditures that are poured into our races, municipal races, to level the playing field and increase fairness. or if campaign and finance reform is something that's only handled at the state level, and I can ask them for help with this. But if there's anybody out there in the ether that knows the answer, I would love to hear more about that. That's all for me tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Vogely.
Thank you. It's going to be a while, so get ready. I had asked questions previously via email, as you know, and also via here when I was wearing a purple jacket, and because I was watching them again and transcribing our words that are said. And offline, and yeah, offline, it's not written, so it can, I don't have any proof. But I was told that the owners were considering making an offer to the city, not making an offer to the city, but offering to sell rather than to go to court. And so that is interesting, and I heard that from a director here. Can you speak to that?
I don't believe they've been in contact with the city about selling, but the owner had the property on the market long before this condemnation
Yes, that's not
process.
what I am talking about.
I
I am
don't-
talking
beyond-
directly
Beyond that, I don't
with
have any,
this.
I don't have any specific knowledge.
Okay, so that was either a lie or not. Also, I heard from the same person that the Common Street LLC had was finished. There was no open contract with Common Street, and so they were indeed, y'all were working on a new contract. So that sounds like it's the amendment. And then here is the professional services agreement and their approach and the statement of work. So I know that March 1st, 2024 is the completion date. So it would still be a thing. So that also was a misinformation.
I'm sorry, what was the misinformation? Just so I
That I
understand.
received that there was no open contract with Common Street LLC and that we were working on getting them some more money.
I'm sure the director simply misspoke that we would need an amendment for them to do the additional depth of work that we need to
Yeah.
support these residents.
Correct.
So can we get the receipts from their work? Because they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people making hourly rates of 208, 185, 155, 125,
Councilmember
155.
Vogely, I'd be happy to follow up with you on that.
Quicker rather than like,
You know I'm pretty speedy.
you are pretty speedy.
Okay.
But I'm not sure that the receipts have been receipted yet because it takes
Absolutely,
like 2
it does.
months for us to get the tables with all of the little teeny 8-point font at the very end of the monthly budget paperwork from Susie. So I know that it takes time. But if indeed they have they have charged the city for their $45,000, and they've visited once or twice, then that might be an issue. Okay, so you're saying that, in fact, Marmina LLC and his one group of lawyers didn't work with Kinnan Williams and our group of lawyers to come up with a selling agreement. And this is not why the eviction, actually 2 eviction notices have been put forward.
I'm sure there's been some communication to the effect of, here's what we value the property at. Is your
Yes, that's- yes.
client interested in selling at that amount?
Answer the question.
I'm not sure I understand what your question is.
My question is, have our legal team that is with the Waits Motel, dealing with the condemnation for blight at the Waits Motel, Kinnan Williams, and others, or Cart or something, I imagine, because you are the boss, have they had discussions outside of the courtroom to let the city of Everett purchase the land and buildings.
They'll let us purchase it? Well,
Yes.
there's always a back and forth in a condemnation proceeding where you put out your assessed value. and
Within
they-
the past 2 weeks, has there been,
Not that I'm aware of.
okay, thank you. So I get the receipts. I voted no, August 2nd, because I did not believe the city would actually pay for these people to be relocated. That's why I voted no. So there is that. And at that time, I asked for the RCWs and all of the legal ease and whacks and laws that we needed to utilize in order to pay for these people to be relocated. And I got those answers. And that's what started me on a rabbit hole. Now I have a 4-inch binder of all sorts of things regarding the Waits Motel that I set aside because I thought, okay, it's over. I can't do anything more about it. And now they're being evicted. And I think personally, and this is all just an opinion, so there's no fact here. I think that this is the perfect scapegoat to get these people out of the Waits Motel and not have to be paid for by the city who said we really
Well, I can tell you,
would.
the city doesn't have any interest in getting these people out of the hotel without paying to relocate them, and there's been no intent to do that whatsoever, and that's not what we're trying to do here, so.
Yeah, I'll just say, kicking these residents out onto the street would have zero benefit to the city.
Oh, I know.
It would actually cost us far more than any expenditure we would have on relocation. So even if we were heartless and only cared about the bottom line, it would be far more beneficial for us to pay for relocation. And so we're required to do that by RCW, so we are doing that, but we're also not heartless. We care about these people. We also care about our economy and making sure that our first responders aren't having to, do all this extra work. So all of the things benefit the city, both helping the people and getting them relocated is in our best financial interest as well as in the safety of the city. So that is what we're working towards. And they are not being evicted. I will get as much information as I can, and having these questions ahead of council would have been helpful because I could have assured that the appropriate staff were here. However, we are going to do what we can to get those answers to you this evening. But I can share that there's no notification that has been made to us that residents are being evicted this evening. I would assume that somebody would have contacted us and said, hey, this is happening in your city.
You would assume, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, you would assume that your people and the PSA folks would know what's going on with all of the people at the
We
Waits.
do know that they were handed these eviction notices, and our team has been working around the clock.
Did you know there
to
was
deal with
2 of
this.
them? So,
I don't know whether my team
Okay.
knows that. I know that I was not aware of 2.
so I'm saying all of these things. I have a timeline also for keeping us up to date has not been a thing. And we might not be here today if we had known what's going on in a reasonable time. August 2nd, the vote. August 3rd, press release from President Stonecipher stating, the city council has been assured that there will be relocation support, etc. Friday, August 11th, an email from Tim Benedict answering a question of mine which states, the condemnation ordinance becomes effective 15 days after the mayor signs it. Tuesday, August 15th, Jennifer Gregerson says the city is committed to working as quickly as possible with the residents, as soon as the legal process allows. Common Street LLC was contracted August 23rd. August 30th, the council was again told that the city, I wasn't here that night. I had a really good time that night. The council was again told that the city would be following the law and providing services and relocation to the residents of the Waits. A month later, on September 20th, we had an update from Emily Simpson, the manager, that spoke about these specialists finally making contact. And then a month later, October 25th, I asked, I am curious about the Waits Motel. I'm not sure how often we're going to get updates. But the residents are concerned with being in limbo and having their power shut off, which has happened a few times. They've had their plumbing shut off and backed up, you know, all of the things that we hear about in blighted. I am not saying that this is not a wretched place, but there's still people living here. And November 5th, I sent an email asking for an update with some specific questions. I have asked here for specific questions, and now we get some answers that are disheartening because, oh, we care so much about the people in our city, and yet, oh, I don't know if we've talked to them. Well, I couldn't say, you know, so
I'm not a social worker. That's
I'm
not my
not
job.
asking you to
and
be a
so our
social
social
worker.
workers actually have the information that you're asking for, and they do
then
not work here
can
at
you
the
write
council
it in an
meeting.
email?
I will.
And
I
get those
promise.
things, because
I
in
will
your.
follow up with you, council member. Please be respectful.
Okay.
Perhaps if we understood who kind of is the point person in administration on this, maybe we could get connected.
Julie Willey's the Community Development
great.
Director. She's the
Thank
point
you.
person, and she oversees the social workers who are working together with Common Street. But this is a legal issue, so it's a very complicated issue. It's not something that a city undertakes lightly as property condemnation. So it actually interfaces multiple departments: administration, legal, community development mainly. And so legal takes the lead on all the legal side of this, whereas on the human side, which we care passionately about, it's the community development team, and that's their job as social workers to take care of these people. And that's what they're doing their best to do. These are sadly not the only people in need of our assistance in the community.
I know, we just had an emergency the other week.
And Councilmember, I will say, because it sounds like it's one thing you were interested in, we did hear the rumor that water or power or gas had been shut off or was going to be shut off, and we looked into that, and we spoke with the PUD to make sure that didn't happen. We spoke with our water utility to make sure that had not happened and would not happen. So we have heard those rumors, and we have worked hard to make sure that nobody there is without power or water.
Wow, so you do know what's going on sometimes and can fix it. Thank you. That was awesome. I'm glad that that was happening. I think both, I heard a couple times today that specifically it's the owner tonight that owns it right now that is responsible for the atrocities and getting it blighted. We know it's been going on for 30 years, so it's not only MedHat, it's everybody else prior. Just putting that out there. And now, moving away from the Waits, I wrote something else. I was able to attend the press conference on Monday to hear about the impending strike of Providence nurses. I support the nurses and implore Providence to go back to the bargaining table in good faith. Sunday, I joined a teach-in about the Everett Massacre of November 5th, 1916. It was interesting to learn that the union members were invited to speak in downtown Everett by community members in full support of their cause, only to be shot at by the sheriff and his deputized citizens. We did get a letter from the library board. Thank you. I haven't read it fully because it's like 3 pages, and I sat down and saw it before here. But thank you for writing that, library board. Let's see. There have been two vehicle collisions versus pedestrians that I have actually seen in the past week, or the aftermath, rather. One on Broadway on 33rd, and one on Evergreen Way. I was riding the bus to the festivities of last night, so that's just a reminder. You never know when somebody's going to jump out into the road. You also shouldn't be looking at your phone just in case they do. And I don't know why people were hit, but there's so many different reasons. But again, it's another collision versus with the pedestrian. And This is 3 minutes, I timed it. I was really hoping for a different outcome. I might turn into the most despised council member in the city of Everett's history. It will be for good reason, though. I may not change the minds of my colleagues, as we've seen time and time again, but I will show their qualities. There shall be no hiding from the truth. The light for fascism burned a little brighter in Everett last night. The sigh of relief from those who would prefer law and order over justice and redemption fanned the flame that must be put out. My tears were not enough. My voice is not broken, and I will continue to speak up against injustice and the new commercial club. I have already been locked out of this club. The lock is heavy, the door impenetrable. I could be the one and say they know not what they do, but then I would be a liar, and a liar I am not. We retain the beautiful in face and calm in speech. We welcome back the one who listens, then lies. The emperor has her elite. The queen shall have no qualms feeding crumbs to the carcasses having shed their humanity for favor. I've only ever tried to get a different perspective on this council, and I have been shot down time and time again in public and behind the scenes. I understand politics, and I am no politician. I care what choices are made to protect all of us, not the rich, not the corporations, not the administrators of nonprofits. Decorum gets us nowhere and leads to stagnation and death. Decorum is the pathway to blind trust. Decorum paves the way for liars and cheats to gain and retain control. I am certain we shall have decorum, but we will not know peace. Watch closely what happens at the Waits Motel, the people who call it home, and the land it sits upon. Whose will win the Waits? Watch closely the budget. How many department heads will be hired instead of department feet? How many consultants? Watch the ordinances come through to keep people in jail longer, with no services for those who make it out alive. Watch for emergencies that are declared because the optics are better for one but not the other. Watch for the blue light in the alley by the light switch. They keep turning it on to remind you it is off. Thank you.
Councilmember Zarlingo.
Well, I'd like to echo the council members' thanks for those who came to speak to us and help us do our job better. And in consideration of the very long agenda we've got tonight and the other questions that will come up, I think I'll limit my comments to that. Thank you.
Thank you, and I have no questions or comments. Do we have an administrative update this evening?
A couple items. So first, we just have one request to amend your agenda to hold the action on the stadium items at 17 and 18. We have our expert here, the ownership and consultants on that project, so we definitely want to keep the briefing this evening and also allow for the further public comment. It also gives us a chance to hear your questions, and anything we can't answer tonight, we can bring back next week. And then finally, hopefully all of us will be able to either participate in person or virtually, if possible. So we have that request. And then a couple other quick items. So one, last week, Councilmember Ryan, you shared some concerns about the downtown Halloween trick-or-treating event, experiences for families downtown. I'm sure everyone saw the positive coverage on social media. And then my kind of personal privilege note, I hope that you recognize that part of activating downtown is having more eyes on the street. That's really a nod to urban planning luminary Jane Jacobs. And so when we do have those eyes on the street, it's always important to call 911 or the non-emergency line if you're kind of uncertain about it when you see individuals, engaging in risky behavior or using drugs, et cetera. Thanks to Councilmember Ryan, you dedicated some of your COVID recovery funds to the Downtown Everett Association. That's helping them launch a kind of another round of a program of business storefront improvement grants. Hopefully not just for broken windows, for kind of a little bit more than that, but it certainly helps businesses fix those types of repairs. Okay, last two. Last week, a resident commented regarding pedestrian safety near Colby and 14th Street. Police officers have already conducted some traffic enforcement, and we plan to deploy radar trailers in that vicinity. Also last week, we heard some comments from a resident about our website. As you guys remember from a couple weeks ago, Director Nicole Weber's presentation mentioned our work to continue to improve and update that website, and that will continue now and into the new year. And I'll leave it at that.
President Stone-Cipher, may I make a quick comment?
Yes, Councilmember Ryan.
Thank you. I wanted to correct the record. I was about to pull up my comments from last week's meeting, but my comments were to share what a great entire weekend I had in Everett. And it was a very Everett-centric weekend I shared. And I went to the skating rink in downtown and trick-or-treated in my neighborhood. There was a lot of things that happened that weekend, and we loved going to the downtown trick-or-treating event. We saw Webley, my kids squealed with joy and were very excited. We had a lot of fun, so it wasn't at all a criticism about the downtown trick-or-treating event. It was more of a commentary about how great it was to see families enjoying our downtown and enjoying Everett, and just the thirst for being in our downtown space, but then the reminders of some of the struggles that we have while we were there. So it wasn't a criticism, it was just more of a general commentary, so I just wanted to correct the record. Thank you.
Thank you. We will move on to our consent agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the 13 consent items?
So moved.
Oh, second the motion.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second on the consent agenda. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Vice President Tui?
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo?
Yes.
President Stonecipher?
Yes. Next, we have two.
Council President, did we skip city attorney comments?
Oh, I'm sorry. I had called on you before.
I know it seemed like I was already up, but I do want to say that we're not requesting an executive session tonight, and beyond what I've had to say, there's no more report, although it did warm my heart to hear Jennifer Gregerson cite Jane Jacobs, great urbanist. That was the first land use book I read 37 years ago as a young land use lawyer, so thank you.
Thank you, and my apologies for not getting back to you there. We have two proposed action items. They're first reading, so I'll read them into the record. Item 14 is Council Bill 2310-57, first reading. Adopt an ordinance closing a special improvement project entitled Hannibrook Park Improvement Project. Fund 354, Program 85 is established by ordinance number 3931-23. The third and final reading for this will be on November 29th. And item 15 is Council Bill 2310-58, first reading. Adopt an ordinance closing a special improvement project entitled T.A. Sullivan Caretaker House Demolition, Fund 354, Program 082, as established by ordinance number 3932-23. And the third and final reading on this item will also be on the 29th. Do we have any questions or comments on those? Yes, Councilmember Ryan.
Thank you. Comment on proposed action, item 14 for the Hannibrook Park Improvement Project. Just wanted to give a special shout out to my favorite County Council member, Megan Dunn, for allocating some of her REIT dollars to this project to make the improvements at the park. And there was a video done about it, if you haven't seen it on social media, showing all of the great things that have happened, or just go in person and enjoy all of the exercise equipment. So just wanted to give a shout out. She also provided money for the, well, that too, the bathrooms, and for the interlocal and the dog park, and in our consent item, the interlocal agreement for the REIT 2 funding for Kiwanis Park. So our representative on the county council is doing great things for us. That's all, thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the proposed action items? We move on to our briefing agenda. These items come before the City Council serving as a council committee of the whole and are likely to be scheduled at a future meeting. Item 16 is Council Bill 2310-59, first reading. Adopt an ordinance amending the development agreement for the Everett Riverfront District properties related to the landfill site, amending Section 1 of Ordinance Number 3121-09 as previously amended. Third and final reading will be on the 29th of this month. Good evening, York.
Good evening, Council President Stonecipher, Council Mayor. York Stevens Wajda, Planning Director. Item 16 is an ordinance that would authorize the mayor to amend the Riverfront Development Agreement regarding the entertainment anchor for the Riverfront central portion of the Riverfront development. There's a public hearing on this on November 29th. Want to make sure that folks know that there's an opportunity to speak on this if they would like, November 29th at this council meeting. The Planning Commission recommends approval of the ordinance. There's also an associated amendment to the amended and restated property disposition agreement regarding that same entertainment anchor, as well as minor reshuffling of the phases of the Eclipse Mill Park portion of that property disposition agreement and phasing schedule. I want to introduce, we have Gary Young and Eric Evans with Shelter Holdings. They are the development team leading the Riverfront project, and they can walk you through what this amendment is about and the evolution in this entertainment anchor. And I think we've got some slides for them to show some visuals. Whatever's comfortable.
Did you want to stand or sit?
I'll stand and then Eric can sit. Gary Young, Shelter Holdings, Bellevue, Washington. Council President, council members, mayor, and staff. I'm getting old, and we've been working on the Riverfront Community Project for over 10 years. And it's a short history because we had a big agenda, and I'm going to be brief. But I remember the days of 16% interest rates in the 80s. I remember 2008, the Great Depression, which I thought happened in 1929, and 10% unemployment. We're definitely in bumpy times in the world without question. We're very active in the community, working with many of the local nonprofits. It's heartwarming to hear and distressful to hear many of the comments made tonight, and we're very empathetic to the community at large and make active participation, Housing Hope, the YMCA helping their new facility, Cocoon, Village Theater, Shack for many years, and there's so many vital organizations, Housing Hope and others in this community, and it's part of the attraction we have for being in this community. And really appreciate your public service, each of you, all doing what you do and going for election again and coming back and carrying forward. It's so essential in our society. And moving forward, it'll be challenging. And we're looking at higher interest rates in our business and the effects that we see throughout the society. We are committed and we're excited that we now have 45 residents in our community, and that was such a long, long process to get through, and very collaborative, and we appreciate the support of the city and all of the participants. Over 100 people working a day, for years now at that property in this last couple of years. So my time is up, and I must turn over the excitement to Eric Evans, my partner Jeff Gow, and I appreciate being here. Eric is a mastermind of this community. His heart and soul have been in it for so many years in pulling it together, and we'd like to share a little bit about what we're looking at for some change that we think will be exciting. And we also just very much want to thank you for your support. We need it. We need to work collaboratively together. It's the only way we're all going to succeed, and we're about that. So thank you.
Great. For the benefit of the record, my name is Eric Evans, Shelter Holdings. My address is 11624 Southeast 5th Avenue, Bellevue, Washington. It's great to be back in front of you. As many of you remember, the envision for Riverfront Incorporated, a cinema, it was severely impacted by COVID. As many of you know, we came back to you and said, we need to reserve the theater for a future phase and let that industry recover. But in the meantime, we'd keep looking for the type of engaging, immersive anchor tenant that could give us a great space for people to come to the riverfront and engage. Retail is changing today, and when we go out to shop, we tend to want to find places that are interactive, that where we spend a couple hours, we grab something to bite, to eat, something to hang out. And so we've spent a great deal of time trying to find that type of interactive, immersive, and tonight's proposal is to authorize that. It's to come back to you and say, we'd like to change the cinema use to this proposed use today. So if it's okay, I'll...
Easy things arrow.
Okay. Forgive me, I'm the wrong person to operate a computer. There we go. So this is the original site plan. You can see a box for the what we're calling the anchor food and recreation. It was originally the cinema. We're changing that now to that title, and proposing our anchor tenant is proposing a interactive. I think the best way to put it is a pickleball facility with indoor and outdoor courts. It's a chef-catered restaurant where they have opportunities to hold events, live theater, concerts. About 25% of their business is actually events for corporate activities. It's a place you can spend hours on, bring your dog, hang out, and it's been a very successful business for them across the country. They're in multiple locations throughout the Midwest. This would be their first location here in Washington. I'm sorry, I'm not able at this time we're still confidential, we can't share. We hope that in the next 30 days we can, and are working that way, but they have advanced this information with us. This is a more close site plan of the program. You can see a couple indoor court facilities in the back, a couple covered courts on to the left, and then the interactive restaurant, bar, and seating area. These are elevations for the buildings that they've developed with us, with a variety of palettes. Their goal, honestly, is to be open for business here by the second quarter of 2025. So it's an aggressive schedule. Some of their locations, they bring upwards of 60,000 people a year to. People love pickleball. And this is a great way to spend time, and we're excited to be able to bring it to the riverfront. Another series. This is all very compatible with what we built so far to date in terms of material, I think in deference to your long schedule, I thought we'd keep it short. Actually, I was told to keep it short. So answer any questions.
Well, the pickleball lobby in Everett is strong. I'm just going to be very happy about this. Any other questions from council members? Councilmember Ryan.
Thank you. So the action that comes before us is what now?
I can answer that if that's okay.
Great.
So in order for us to proceed with the construction drawings and the permits for this facility, the development agreement needs to be amended to authorize the use. So when we had a cinema use before, we designated it on the site plan. This changes it so that we can have an anchor food entertainment use and move forward with the construction drawings. I'm sorry, I skipped over that part of the presentation.
Great, thank you.
Councilmember Zerlingo.
Well, just a quick summary. I guess some of this is maybe personal preference, but where you've got a large residential area and you have a climate that we have that sometimes, and people's jobs that occupy them all hours, that lack of, it may be much better for people to be playing pickleball than watching movies. So I guess generally speaking, if I had to choose between the two, not knowing, I think I would go in that direction. And plus, as our city attorney would probably appreciate, having some pickleball courts to take the pressure off of other people trying to convert tennis courts into pickleball courts is likely to reduce the temperature a little bit as well. So I think I see the point is that there's kind of an agreement that's been implicit in this. We need to change that, and I would say in that direction for lots of reasons I see. That's a great idea.
Vice President Tui.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. So in looking at this image here, is this court on the water side, or is it where the parking lot is?
So that image that photo was taken essentially as if you were at the very top right-hand corner of the pickleball court facility. So it's away from the water.
Okay.
It's on the west side.
Okay.
When we developed the site plan, that main riverfront plaza that you see was to carry forward to a public plaza, which is completed. And then at the end of it will be this pickleball court facility so that you can spill out and from the plaza and into the pickleball facility.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Vogely.
So the pickleball will be accessible to all, or is it for pay?
It's available for all ages. They do hold professional clinics, and they're quite successful. People like to take lessons, but it's also available for rent, and you can just come and grab a sandwich.
But it is a business, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So it's not a park, it's a business, private business.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Any
you
other
so
questions,
much
comments?
for your
Thank you.
comments. We are also very excited. We got a lot of great comments from Planning Commission. and extremely positive and very supportive, and feel blessed that we had a unanimous decision in the one and only night, and moving ahead as they saw, well, let's get going. So we really appreciate everyone's support, and thank you.
My question is, assuming this goes forward and is approved, approximately when would this be available for our, you might have said that, the timeline?
Their goal is to be open in the second quarter of 2025.
25, okay, thank you. You did say that. All right, any other questions or comments? All right, we thank you for coming, and we will see you back on the 29th for the final action.
Do I turn this off?
Next, we have the 2 briefing and action items that we'll just brief together, and we will not be taking action on these until next week. Items 17 and 18, I'll read them both. Item 17 is authorize the mayor to sign the professional services agreement with Shills Oblitz Johnson, Inc. in the amount of $344,400 and substantially the form provided. Item 18 is award the FRQ 2023-117 and authorize the mayor to sign the professional services agreement with Environmental Sciences Associates in the amount of $807,421 in the substantially the form provided. And I see Dan Ernest is here to brief us on these items. Good evening, Dan.
Yes, I'm going to be introducing our speakers, but also just a short introduction. President Cipher and council members, thank you very much for this opportunity and the flexibility to push off the vote till next week. One thing that government agencies should and oftentimes do really well is make deliberate decisions. We take our time, we go through lots of process, and the 2 contracts before you are really to help with that process, to arm you as council members for the tough decisions coming up on where to place a facility, if to place a facility, how to pay for it, and whether or not to acquire private land in order to make it happen. All those are tough questions that the state has mandated a process, the SEPA EIS process, and that's what we'll be taking us through. Before we launch into the presentation with SOJ, I can't pronounce what that stands for ever.
Neither can I.
Yeah, SOJ is best. Chad Volpe, one of the ownership team of the Aqua Sox, is here just to provide a brief welcome. So Chad.
Thank you, Dan. As he mentioned, my name's Chad Volpe. I'm one of the owners of the Everett Aqua Sox. I think I've met pretty much all of you and spent time and appreciated that. We have been when I say we, it's my family. It's a family business. We've been sort of the owners and the stewards of the Aqua Sox as an asset in the community for 15 years. The Aqua Sox have been in Everett for just about 40 years. So quite a long history here in the city and in the county. I think I'd first like to just thank the council for their past support of the Aqua Sox and future support of the Aqua Sox. We really try to do a good job of making the city proud of something that people view as affordable, family-friendly entertainment, accessible to everyone, any day of the week, time of day, that you can come out, have fun. As I always joke, just as an aside, about 70% of the people who leave our ballpark not only can't tell you who's winning, they can't tell you the score, they can't tell you anything. They're just there to have a good time, to socialize, all ages, families, older folks, younger folks, it doesn't matter. We're sort of open for all and welcome all. It's just a good time and entertainment. As I said, we've been here for 40 years. We're now at a point where we need to look ahead at the next 40 years of how do we make sure that this asset in the community that is fun, people enjoy going to, ensures survival for the next 40 years. So the next generation of baseball fans and can come, enjoy the game, more than enjoy the game, just have fun and enjoy the experience of being there. And what does that look like and what does that take to make sure that professional baseball stays in this city for the next 40 years and everything that entails. So I think our number one goal is to make sure that that happens. However that looks like, whatever that looks like, we're not picky. We want to make sure that It stays here in this community. There are other communities around the country that are going through the same process, and some of them are losing their teams. And we have zero interest in having that happen. We want this to be here, be an anchor of the community. People are proud of, people want to come out. We support local businesses. As I always say, we want to be the business that other businesses want to do business with. Yes, we are a business, but there's things that you can do to be proud of that, to incorporate everyone, to have other people view you as a good entity, good people, and that's what we want to do. And so I'll just wrap up that we look forward to working with the council, with the mayor, with everyone at the city to evaluate how do we make sure that the next generation of fans in Everett, baseball fans or not baseball fans, whomever they may be, can enjoy this asset for as long as they're around, continue to grow the community, encourage businesses and growth and nonprofits, and promote all those businesses in the community and in the city, and be able to promote them across the county and beyond the county, because our fans are coming in from beyond Everett city limits, beyond Snohomish County limits, and so we view ourselves as sort of a venue to promote everything that Everett has to offer to families, to individuals, to other businesses, and all the like. So I appreciate your support so far. Look forward to working with you going forward, and thank you very much.
Ben France tonight is going to be speaking. He represents SOJ, and I've really enjoyed getting to know Ben and his team. He was the manager of the Pike Place Market for 7 years, and before that, the Santa Monica Pier. He exemplifies what a good consultant does. He provides both capacity and expertise, and that's especially important in a unique project like this. So, Ben?
Thanks, Dan. And I'm a resident of the state of Washington. I grew up in Pullman. Obviously, as Dan mentioned, spent some time in Southern California, but this is, the Northwest is really home. And I'm sheepish to admit that I've left a few of my hard-earned dollars at Torfab here in downtown Everett, restoring a classic Land Cruiser. Council President, members of the council, Mayor, it's wonderful to be here this evening to talk a little bit about baseball, but to really talk about community and how you go through a process of due diligence, careful analysis of sites and locations, environmental impacts, to develop an informed decision for how you'll invest the public dollars and your dollars in renewal and regeneration, and certainly, yes, baseball, public open space, and multi-use facilities in Everett. Before I get to that, just a little bit of background about SOJ. This is a firm I joined just about 7 years ago, prior to being the director of the Pike Place Market, and prior to that, the Santa Monica Pier. SOJ's been in the Pacific Northwest for just shy of 40 years, focusing on large, complex projects that often fall in the public realm, often involve multi-government partnerships, public and private partnerships, complex sites, complex schedules, complex timelines, or often all of the above. So I was very privileged to lead the market through a major renovation, a new development. I'm leading the Seattle Aquarium through the Ocean Pavilion and renewal of Seattle's waterfront. My partner Ken Johnson was the project executive on Climate Pledge Arena. My partner Ethan Bernot currently represents Lumen Field in their major renovations, as well as the 2026 World Cup local committee in their site selection for practice facilities and improvements to other local venues to host that in 2026. Also listening in tonight, along with Ethan, is Julie DeDonato, very skilled project manager, previously worked for Vulcan and has joined us on this project, and she's really the day-to-day contact and leading this effort along with your skilled staff and other consultant teams. Want to share a little bit of background. I know all of this is information you know, but I think it's important to remember that we're at the very beginning of a process, but there's already been a fair bit of work done. Several mentions tonight about the long-standing relationship with the Aqua Sox here in Everett and how much that means to the city and to the community as a whole. In 2021, Major League Baseball reconfigured the minor league and established a whole host of new requirements for stadium facilities serving their minor league teams. Funko Field, as it's currently configured, does not meet those requirements, so you will be looking at a significant investment in either renewal of that facility or constructing a new facility within your city. And ultimately, the decision before you is, what's the best use of those dollars that catalyzes investments in your city, is in the best interest of the community, and prepares Everett, as Chad so eloquently said, for the next 40 years of baseball fans. The city of Everett and Snohomish County are partnering in a public-private partnership with the Aqua Sox to develop this proposed new multi-purpose facility. In September of 2022, you jointly passed a resolution supporting the investigation and feasibility study of a new Everett outdoor multi-purpose stadium. A few statistics about that: projected to have 2,800 to 3,200 fixed seats, up to 5,000 seats for events. Could also be a facility that had open space components, park space, in addition to the ball field. Here's a brief timeline that shows some of the work that's been conducted since that resolution was passed. You completed an economic analysis of the impact of the Aqua Sox to the community. Certainly there's a passion in the community for the Aqua Sox, but there's also an economic benefit to your city having a minor league team present. Earlier this year, you were able to secure a commitment from the state capital funds of $7.4 million to put toward the advancement of studies and analysis, review, and ultimately design of a new facility, depending on where you choose to locate that. We were hired to help out initially to organize the team, organize the approach, assess the landscape for potential funding models, and help select an EIS consultant to run that process. You've also completed initial site selection studies with Populous. They're a well-known and well-respected stadium designer. We issued an RFQ for a SEPA consultant that would conduct this EIS. In concert with that, you've also completed some stadium district visualization work with Northwest Studios, so starting to get a sense of how these facilities could fit in different parts of your city. You've completed some civil engineering for some of the potential sites just to understand what's the physical landscape, what are some of the challenges you may face in some of those individual sites. And then being introduced to you tonight is a recommendation to proceed with that SEPA consultant and an EIS process. Just a couple of notes around the EIS process. SEPA refers to the state's environmental impact, environmental protection policy, SEPA, and then EIS is the environmental impact statement. And this is something that's really important for any government body when you're making a major decision about the use of public resources, the development of new assets, to go through that and understand the traffic impacts, the environmental impacts, even the noise and dust and disruption impacts from construction, so that as you're making that decision, you are armed with all of that information and data. It also allows for a robust community process. So the community voice, there's multiple opportunities for residents and businesses to chime in, share their perspective, share their concerns. And that's really critical, I think, and will help support you in quality decision-making. Our goal is to complete this EIS in a timely process. We're proposing starting with 2 alternatives and a no-action alternative. It is possible during this process that other alternative sites could be identified and studied, and that's something that you can decide as we move forward. So looking at the existing Funko field and a potential downtown adjacent location. We issued a request for qualifications. We received responses from 4 firms, went through an interview process, and ultimately through the scoring, Environmental Science Associates, or ESA, is recommended to conduct this EIS. We've engaged in a negotiation with them, and so the contract you see before you for your consideration is the results of all of that work. Happy to take any questions you may have about the work of SOJ or this project, and certainly about the importance of moving forward with the EIS.
Questions? Councilmember Vogely.
More of a comment. It was just really great to hear all of the reasons for due diligence and how important it is to really study deeply when we're going to be making such a large decision. So thank you for bringing that to the forefront.
Other questions? Councilmember Ryan, then Councilmember Zerling.
Thanks. Is there a separate presentation for number 18, or was this is this all of it?
It's just, no, there's not a separate one, so just for both, yeah.
Great, thank you. So I know for these two different studies, the cost is covered by the grant that we received from the state. Is that correct? Or the grant that we will be receiving from the state?
Yes, so, yeah, that should cover this cost, or at least go towards the full stadium costs in general. Yep.
Thanks. And the 7.4 million from the state, this totals a little over 1 million. Has the rest of that 6.9 or whatever's left, has that been earmarked for what's next?
I would say no. I mean, we need a legislative fix to make sure that it comes towards us. We have everything in place for that. A letter from the leadership of both the House and Senate, Democratic and Republican leaders, to ensure that it's directed to the city of Everett and not the school district, is what the legislative language said. So I think along with that, we can refine exactly that agreement with Department of Commerce, which is the granting agency where the funds would come, who would administer the funds to the city.
Great. And then I guess for cost in general, I mean, I'm glad that the state's going to be covering the cost for these studies, but then if it's approved to build the stadium, is there a cost structure that's been, that's available, that can be shared with council? I mean, how would we pay for a stadium? Because stadium's going to be a lot more than $6 million.
That's right, yeah. That will be developed in the next coming months, partly with the help of SOJ, largely leading that process, partly with the help of going through the SEPA process, because it really depends on where you site it. And so the cost will change based on that. But we're already been examining different financing tools, I guess, lots of different sources, I guess is a better word to use than tools, sources for that.
Will those options be available to council before we make decisions on what's next?
Yeah, absolutely. This is really the beginning of the process. I mean, you've done a fair bit of work already to make the commitments to studying this. But there's an extensive process. Once you're through the EIS process, you'll make a formal site selection. Upon formal site selection, then you can advance the design work. And then there's multiple steps during the design process that runs over the course of at least a year, where you have multiple price checks, multiple estimates that allow you to get a sense of the full budget before you ultimately make the investment to produce and build the new asset.
Great. Go ahead, Councilman Tui.
Vice President, I called on
Oh.
Councilmember Zerling, go first.
Sorry, I didn't
Go ahead.
see that well, I'm concerned that I would like to look at the finances before we even look at a site, that make a selection on a site. I mean, ultimately, I believe the taxpayers are going to have to pay for this. And in looking at some of the information that we received, you average about 2,200 people to the games, of which only 22% are from the city of Everett. So the Everett taxpayers are going to be paying for this stadium or improvements at this current site. And so I really need to know what that's going to look like and what is the impact for our taxpayers and over how many years is that going to happen. We have a very limited, the average household in the city of Everett is the second lowest median income in our county. So we don't have a lot of means to spend on something that's $60 million. And so I really think that we need to have some kind of an idea of what this cost is going to be well before we decide on a site that's different than where we're at.
Is it on? Sorry, I just wanted to address one thing with the 22, your attendance number is basically correct, I don't have the numbers on me, but the 22% Everett residents, I would love to follow up on that and confirm that's right. That seems
Well,
low.
it came from the study on the stadium that you just sent out to us this week, Jennifer, I don't know who did the study, but it was a very big packet.
If you're amenable, I'd just love to follow up, and
Yeah.
I can follow directly to confirm what that number is and what the breakdown
Yeah.
is, because we have that data. So I want to make sure it's 100% correct and
Right.
accurate, so.
Anyway, but still, our residents, we're over 110,000, and even if 100% of them for the city of Everett that go to the games, there's still a lot of us paying for something that we're not using. So I just want to see what that bottom line is and what the impact will be to our citizens, the people that live here. So that's my biggest concern with, I want to do it, I want to accommodate Aquasox, it's a great thing, but there's a lot of things we need to spend money on. So I just want to make sure we're being really cautious and careful. And I'd like to know that before we get too far into the weeds.
If I can, Councilmember, that's an excellent question, and it should absolutely be part of your decision-making process. You don't want to ultimately select a site without understanding the financial impacts. Just to give you a range tonight, and these are certainly large numbers, and they vary widely, but we've done initial baselining against a number of similar stadiums in similar sized cities across the country. And the range is from 27 million on the lower end up to 80 million on the higher end. So these are significant investments, and I think that's why it's incumbent upon you to approach this decision with as thorough analysis as possible. So you really are making that informed decision on behalf of your citizens.
And I will add, as Economic Development Director should, that bringing in, what would it be, the 68 or 78% of the people from outside the city to spend money is a positive economic generator for the city in tourism dollars, in lodging, in dining. All those are really positive things for our city and have other benefits beyond just the recreational use that, as you point out, is there for Everett residents.
I agree. We've done a survey through the Shack Art Center to find out how much our patrons spend when they come to visit us, because we don't have a restaurant there, so they do go outside for a restaurant, and they spend about $75 every time they come to visit Everett, whether it's with us or outside. But at a ball field, when I go to a ball game, I eat there, and then I just go home because it's a long time and you're outside. But, I would just be curious if there's any way we could survey some of the folks that go there and find out what do they spend outside of the ballpark. Would be great.
Yeah, well, the economic impact statement that you referenced before said that in 2022, which wasn't as strong of a year as this year because we were still recovering from the pandemic, it was about $16 million, if I remember correctly, in economic impact for the city and $4 million in annual labor. So that's about 20 million. I might be off on that. It might be 12 and 4 for 22. But then estimated with the additional attendance this year is probably around 20 million a year. If we continue to monitor that and update that study, we'll definitely include any of those questions that you might have that could be pertinent. And that's something appropriate when we have specific sites now that we're studying to really show the difference in those. So thank you for those.
Councilmember Zarlingo.
Well, let's see. Councilmember Toohey has asked a number of the questions that I was going to bring up, but I guess in a way there's an obligation on us to maybe be continuing to bug you about some of these questions and be more specific about some of those, because I share the enthusiasm for the Aquasox. I like the scale of it, the participatory nature of it. One of the things that's been encouraging for me to see when I've gone to games are the grassy areas around there where kids are playing who sometimes have nothing to do with the baseball. Sometimes there's other projects and bouncy houses and activities going on. So a better community asset that way. And certainly preserving minor league baseball here. I will want to continue to look at investments in infrastructure that benefit the community beyond the baseball and its spectators. So there's been some discussions about other potential uses of this for event venues or for concerts or something like that. I always want to be cautious about that because we aren't one of the Carolinas in terms of our weather here for big chunks of the year. So we'll want to relate this, for example, to the arena, a fully indoor facility. I need to understand these things better, and you'll pardon me if I am kind of thinking through these things myself as I get the information from you. Certainly looking at what other cities have done, though, in terms of how they've made this go. There's nothing like real experience that way. I guess I'm not sure how much, but I want to make sure that we've engaged with the school district. The current stadium is their property, and of course, all the things that would go on and have been going on with them to negotiate dates and times and use of facilities. I'd like to know as much as possible about their posture in this, how they would see that, and how that facility might, in terms of its other, the areas around it, compare with the more downtown site near the Angel of the Winds.
Can I just jump in and say the school district's been an outstanding partner. They've been very enthusiastic supporters of the Aqua Sox, and they are all in doing everything they can to keep the Aqua Sox here. So they're a very willing, enthusiastic partner that our team is definitely working with and will continue to work with.
Because I know that construction would mean some destruction, probably quite a bit of it there. Of course, there's the Longfellow building and the parking lot there and the other buildings. So that will impact school district operations if that site is chosen. And of course, this would be a facility that the school district would then own, I understand. It's an improvement on their property. Let's see, there were quite a number of things. I'm going to try to, I think the thing we'll want to progress on really continuously is looking at what we can learn about those cost ranges and cost estimates, and about possibilities for financing, different options that way. I assume that, I think I understand from the documents that the team would commit to a long-term lease. Funds would come, I assume, some from the state, some from the county, some from the city. Obviously, some stuff perhaps in kind from the school district if we go there. We'll also want to look at the sites. With the school district, we're talking about a site that we pretty much know hasn't been commercial or industrial, but with the other site, then that's got a history to it that we'll want to understand better and be innovative. One of the things about the riverfront development that I think is really neat is that they took a site that had a lot of contamination, cleaned up some of it. If I remember right, that was at or near the old tire fire site from the 1980s. I mean, I saw that fire from a plane flying back from Europe. I could see that fire burning. So, but they've capped that. I mean, they've got an innovative construction technique there that allows them to occupy that site in a really good way, and use something that would otherwise have been a real challenge. So all of those things are kind of coming together. And I guess what I'm saying is a process here. It always seems, my experience, at least in the private sector, is that early as possible, as extensive as possible, looks at things, have the highest leverage. They spot problems where you've got the most options to fix them or to make an alternative decision. And as I say, in a way, that's kind of something incumbent on me and maybe the rest of the council to kind of firm up some of these specific questions and be asking about these. And really, in the next 2 or 3 months, I think it'd be time for us to have a better beat on that. Not answers, but fairly specific questions of everything from the sites, the financing, the public use of those kinds of things, and as much as we can know about the costs. Chad, it's good to see you again.
Yeah, I should just stay up here. The one thing I want to make clear.
You want to commit to the lease terms right now, Chad? I mean, we could start that.
Just the one thing I want to sort of make clear, a couple of your points touched on, is this is a similar conversation happening in 120 communities around the country. There used to be 160 minor league baseball teams. With the reorganization, that was cut by a quarter. So 40 of the communities that had baseball in them in the last 4 years have lost it. The rest are doing the scramble that we're doing to try to figure out how to get a compliant facility to preserve baseball. A lot of those have looked at relocation and started calling cities and counties and other municipalities to sort of say who can give us the best deal and try to get a compliant facility. We have not done that, don't plan on doing that, and in some ways sort of have doubled down. And I would just bring this up to you. I've mentioned this to the mayor and other people, is we're willing to commit, because we view this as a true public-private partnership, the equivalent of, depending on the range and how our payments are structured, between 20 and 30 years of our profits into this project upfront. So more than we have made in profit since we acquired the team, we are ready to commit to this project to show our seriousness and make sure it gets done. So we've discussed that with ourselves as a private business, but I just want you all to be aware of that as well, that we're very fully committed financially to ensuring that this makes sense. And I think it needs to make sense for everyone, because if any party, this is multiple parties, public and private, and if any one of those fail or it's a bad deal, it's going to drag the whole thing down. So you need to make sure it makes sense for everyone.
And while you're here, do you at this point want to indicate a particular preference for site?
If I can, Chad, I actually want to just caution us to not do that at this moment. I mean, that's really the purpose of this EIS, is to take a clear-eyed look at all the alternatives, the two alternatives and a no project alternative. And Councilmember, we all, I think, are in real time, will develop, perspectives on that. But I think
I'm just trying to develop a clear-eyed look at any leanings.
There's a moment where that decision will clearly be before you. And I think to answer another question you raised, this is the beginning of a very thorough process. And one of the things we'll bring forward as we advance this is an outline of the key decision points that all of you will have in front of you, and estimates for how much you will have expended or committed in the project at that point. Of course, the big moment is when you actually select a site, construction documents are done, and you're going out to select a general contractor to build the facility. But there's a long road between now and then. But I just wanted to address that question, that we'll come forward with a clear roadmap of those decision thresholds throughout the process.
And I think, I guess maybe it's implicit in the way it's presented to us, but you are confident with your studies so far that both of these could be made to work. You don't see a particular impediment or, okay.
Correct.
And can I just, I want to stress what Council Vice President Tui asked and urged, is that council would be presented much firmer numbers before a site is selected. So as they're making that decision between no action, Funko Field, and downtown, they will have a firm idea of the cost and benefit of each of those sites.
I'll add to that too, that Funko Field is really kind of has two options, and the Aqua Sox have been an investor already. They did the populous study and funded that on their own behalf. They are also going to go out, as Chad and I were talking earlier today, and really examine if a renovation of the existing stadium is possible. The populous people didn't give us much hope in that being a cost-effective solution, but we're going to get some second and third opinions and try to look at that. So it could be that the existing site includes a renovation as well as a raise and rebuild option, and there may be advantages to both of those. So am I speaking up for you, Will?
Yeah, we are hopefully we'll be commissioning a study on our own dollar to look at Funko Field, of how do you do it, could you do it, what would it cost, would the team have to be on the road for a year, could you accommodate our programming, could you accommodate the school district's programming. We're in a very unique scenario or situation where we're the only professional team in the country that has a school district as its landlord, but I couldn't be happier. They've been great partners. They continue to be great partners. And so we want to do this study to give the full evaluation objectively at how, when, how much, all those sorts of things to answer it, because I think we just need more information, a lot more information, before we make a site identification selection.
Another process question, if I may. Different field arrangements would offer different possibilities in terms of other uses and public amenities. Maybe a soccer field, for example. I don't think in a baseball field you can usually put a football field, but you can, in some cases, put a soccer field. Obviously, public park aspects and how much of that and where. That constellation of possibilities relates to potential cost trade-offs, which I would rather engage with earlier rather than later, rather than being presented with one thing, this or that. If it turns out that there are some millions of dollars back and forth involved, especially in terms of other public use and the trade-offs that, we face if we're going to be expanding baseball fields or doing something about a pool. So that's why I'm saying I think between now and then, a kind of a more continuous engagement with more questions from us specifically about those. And is there a mechanism then, the question I'm getting to, sorry about this, is there a mechanism in this process for that kind of trade-off to be evaluated?
Absolutely, and I think there's two components to that. There are the number of compatible uses you can include on a single site, and how the uses contribute to potential costs, not only on the capital side, but also the long-term operating and maintenance side, and also on the revenue component. Are there complementary uses that enhance the revenue potential of that venue, extend the seasonality of it, extend the diversity of uses and community use? And so certainly all of that should be and will be part of the consideration of sites and ultimate program.
And for my part, I've been around these parts for a while, and I was involved heavily in the feasibility work that was done for the Everett Event Center. And so I agree with my colleagues. I mean, the Aquasox are just a gem in our community. I go to the game, and I'm one of those people that walks out not knowing the score, not caring, not knowing that I just saw some major league ball player that was back here in the Bush League. And so for me, I'm a business person and CPA, so I look at this as a business venture, and really trying to think. I agree with Vice President Tui. We don't have a lot of money in our community, as you well know, as a business owner in this community. We have to be very mindful of tax dollars that would be obligated to such a venture. And from my perspective, as I look at a business case for it, I mean, we're basically talking about moving the team from one location to another, or maybe just moving them back into the same location, only better. And so the revenue potential in this economic impact study that we received doesn't change very much from the team perspective piece. Maybe we're going to get a few more people coming to the games, but there's going to be a natural inflation of ticket prices and the stuff that we sell at the games. So really, what we're talking about from an economic endpoint, a marginal revenue standpoint to the city and the taxpayers, is really just what else would come to us as a result of building the new stadium. And whether you put a soccer team on there, or a soccer field on there, or you have a park, there's actually hardly any economic impact of those things that is a real dollars impact. And as I looked at this study, I do some of this work in my private practice as well. I didn't see a very thorough analysis of this 5,000 seat venue that would be potentially bringing in concerts or whatever those other uses are. And I don't know that there's a good case to be made at this point that there's a market for that. I mean, I just don't know. But this economic impact study doesn't really help us understand any of that at all. And without doing a more thorough economic impact analysis of, is it 5,000 seats? I mean, we built the Everett Event Center thinking that we were in great shape there. And of course, what we learned is that everything changes, and the entertainment industry is fickle. And so now, we just don't get the concerts that we thought and were predicted there. I'd also point out that we spent a lot of taxpayer dollars on the Everett Event Center and thought we were going to get a ton of redevelopment. And there's been essentially zero redevelopment down in that area. We have seen very, very little. I mean, we were anticipating, just streets filled with people and all sorts of going concern businesses, and it just didn't happen. So I'm not convinced that building an event center or a sports facility of any kind is the, sort of the revitalization driver of that. The other piece of economic information that's critical for us to look at is sort of what the opportunity cost of using this land for the stadium or a new ball stadium would be versus using it for other uses. We know that Sound Transit's going to be in that area, and there's a lot of potential redevelopment that really could create some tax dollars with housing and retail and commercial properties that would actually be on the tax rolls and be paying the city some money and would be helping our budget situation, whereas another stadium that's held by a government agency, government entity does not do that. So I have a lot of concerns about the finances of it, and, you know, I'm an arts person, so I know that, you know, we have things in our community that are important, not because they create a lot of money for us, but because, you know, they create a sense of space. And so we want to make sure that whatever we're doing, we are creating a space for the Aquasox to stay here, because obviously we're getting, you know, 10 to 15 to 20 million dollars in revenue already, and so we don't want you to leave, because then we lose that. But I'm not convinced that the marginal revenue that we get from building something in our community new or taking up new is going to pencil out favorable to our taxpayers. So those are my concerns. As far as the contracts go, I mean, we need to do the economic impacts or the environmental impact study for sure, because we need to know, you know, how that would work, particularly as we look at the current site. And because that process takes a year. And remind me, what's your preferred timeline to have a new stadium available to the team?
Yesterday's not
I
an
know,
answer you
I
can
know,
give,
I know
Chad.
we're
I just
behind
wanna
the
say,
eight ball,
yeah.
but tell me how much.
How long do you have? Major League Baseball put in requirements that we need to have a compliant stadium by April of '25. Not just us, everyone around the country. They realized that just because a bunch of their lawyers in New York told 120 communities to do that doesn't make it feasible, to be honest. So we're pushing back on that as hard as we can. They've gotten comfortable with us pushing that back. Where that lands exactly, that's TBD. I will be totally honest that our facility is not going to be compliant by April of next year, 2024, and we will most likely be fined a six-figure dollar amount as part of that. We sort of are willing to take that on the chin as the cost of doing business and trying to stay here and find a facility that works to call home, because you drag that over 40 years, it's not a lot. It seems a lot up front when you're trying to run a for-profit business, but if you're talking about a forever home, we view it as acceptable. So.
Yeah, okay, good. So, I mean, I think the environmental impact statement contract, I support that. We have to move that forward. But I think at this point, I'm not sure about the project management. I think what we really need is two pieces of information. We need, I don't know if this CHI Community Attributes is capable of doing the kind of detailed economic impact work that we would want. Maybe the scope of work for the study they did was just didn't ask for that, but we need some real economic impact analysis on this additional part of the plan, which is the park, I guess maybe a soccer field, and possibly another venue to find out if there's even a market for that, because we certainly don't need another sub-optimized, venue for outdoor concerts that, that we can't fill and just sits fallow. And then I think we really need to understand, as my colleagues have asked for, is like what are I have no idea what the funding options are for this kind of, facility that we would want to build. Like what's the range of costs, and what are the initial thoughts on funding? I mean, I know the city has visited a couple other facilities, maybe we understand, but, one of those, as I understand, was funded almost exclusively by a property tax increase. Well, that's just not going to go over in Everett. So I need to understand what are the other options aside from what some of these other communities have done to get the funding together. So I don't know how fast those things can come together, but those are the kinds of pieces of information that will help us understand how much more to even invest in this. I mean, we should be conserving this money that the state gave us if we really find that we don't have resources available to us to fund this aside from tax dollars, which those are, but they're at least not, they have already been allocated. So we kind of just need to have a better sense of what does it look like for this to go forward? Is it feasible at all? Should we even be looking at an alternate site with the extra, extra resources and amenities in it? Or should we just be really focusing on the existing site and trying to figure out, not that would be perfect, but that, how can we meet most of the needs that we have or the main needs? So, those are my thoughts. I am interested in moving this forward. And like I said, I was on the original Citizens Financial Advisory Committee for the Event Center, and I recall at that time looking at the demand projections for concerts, and those looked rosy at that time, and little did we know that the whole thing was going to fall apart. And, now we've got, companies like Live Nation owning their own venues, so they don't want to come to ours because there's absolutely no economic incentive for them to be there. So a lot of questions from me. Councilmember Ryan.
Thank you. To build on that, can we get a little bit more clarity on at what point in the process we can expect to have the plans laid out of how it will be paid for?
Hot potato, I got it. It's hard to estimate, and we can talk amongst ourselves and provide a more solid answer, but I think it's in terms of the next 3 months, roughly, that we will have an idea of how much some of the various options are range-wise and some of the different financing packages. I will say that we've already been talking about this. It's the kind of thing that you really want to vet thoroughly before you share it with the council, because as soon as they're out there, they're out there. And so we want to be really careful, obviously, as I'm sure you would advise us to be about those. So it's not one source. It's not like
I'm
just the
looking at
property tax.
SOJ,
Yeah.
who has the expertise and has done this before. I can say that property tax is not something that anyone internally has discussed, and so there's, public-private partnership, so we're looking to the county for funding. We're looking to see what we could do with our own debt capacity. We're looking at if there's additional buckets at the state, if there's company dollars that we can ask for, whether it's naming rights or some of the other larger companies. But you might have other experience being the person who's done complicated projects like this before.
Yeah, I think at a high level, I would anticipate, multiple funding sources for this project. But as it relates to process, there's several processes that run in parallel. So the EIS process is the one that allows you to literally understand the on-the-ground impacts of 2 alternative sites and a no-project alternative. And so that's one path. It also affords robust opportunities for community input, business input into your decision-making. In parallel to that runs the further refinement of the financial analysis. That'll include conversations with your other public partners and private partners. It'll include advancing the terms of a long-term lease, the investment from those other public and private partners, and the amount of those investments. And so that runs in parallel to this EIS process. In addition to the more detailed financial analysis of the potential performance of alternative locations and sites, and if there's value to a mix of uses. You've highlighted, Council President, appropriate concern about, how valid will those numbers be? And that's the work that we have to do in parallel with the EIS, so that you reach a point, let's say it's 8 or 9 months from now, the EIS is complete, you're faced with a decision on selection of a preferred site. You need both of these processes to advance so that you have the breadth of all that information to make the most informed decision on behalf of your community. So hopefully that helps understand. And again, happy to come back with an outline of how that process runs. At the council members' invitation, happy to start negotiations with the Aqua Sox tonight on the terms of their long-term lease.
And I
Yeah.
will say that it is apples and oranges between the stadium and the arena somewhat, because we do have a anchor tenant who's willing to sign a 30-year lease, which we think could go very far to cover the operation cost that is involved with that. And it's a very modest facility compared to the arena, which has so many different uses, and needs to be heated in such a large way. I mean, even something simple like that has Zambonis, for goodness sakes, and all that kind of stuff. So I will say on the PFD's behalf that the arena generates over $90 million a year in economic impact and labor impact for us. It's been a success. It costs us about $90 million, and that's what it's generating every year for the city. The marginal question that you had is dealt with slightly in there, but the market for the other events are kind of assumed in there and not really proven out, and we'll definitely follow up with that question.
I also just want to add a couple things. So SOJ is the expert at, a consultant like SOJ is the expert at negotiating on the city's behalf with all of these different entities that we would be partnering with, whether it's the owners. It's hard to talk about you because you're right there in the room, but we want the owners to invest as much as possible. And so having external partners help us in those conversations, because the city has never done this before, is very important. And that is what we learned when we looked at other sites, is that is why you hire these external companies to negotiate on your behalf, because this is not a project that cities undertake. And so, and projects like this that have that complication of multiple government partners, multiple private partners, we need support outside of city staff's expertise. The other thing I want to note with the financing, I've been equally frustrated, like, what's this going to cost and how is this going to work? Because those are the questions that I've been asking as well. And until we understand the actual costs of each site, they're kind of questions. And I've heard numbers that are wildly different. So whether, as Dan was sharing, if a remodel of Funko Field is possible, I assume that's going to be a lot cheaper. And that would be a great option for us to explore. If it is a demolition and then rebuild, the two sites might be more comparable. And so that is the work that is going on, that we're undertaking right now with these studies, so that you have that information and we can hopefully make a decision that keeps the Aqua Sox and saves as many resources as possible. Because as you've all heard from me repeatedly, yes, we have a structural deficit. Yes, we have a lot of other needs and priorities. Oftentimes, what we spend these types of dollars on cannot be spent on some of the other priorities we have, like housing and human services and safety. But those, they're park dollars or other dollars that we also want to steward and protect. So I've been kind of in the same boat, and we will hopefully get that information through the next couple of months of these studies.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and you bring up kind of another point, which is, if the Aqua Sox are moving out of the school district's facility, then we're suddenly faced with trying to support two facilities in our community, and what's the viability of that? I mean, we obviously don't have that much baseball going on. We're a small community to support two full kind of professional quality type baseball stadiums. So I just wonder what the impact of that is on the school district's facility as well as ours, because we would be then splitting up all that baseball into two separate places. Any other questions? Thank you.
Can I just make one last comment? You mentioned the project management contract specifically as being on the fence about that, and I would just put in my strong recommendation as a staff person who has worked with SOJ for the last several months Our initial contract with them was under the $50,000, limit. And they have proven to be time and time again worth the investment that we're making in them. Both the capacity building for a very, very lean team that we have on staff, but the expertise as well. For example, Ben's comment earlier tonight on being objective and not picking a site, it was very well stated, and it wouldn't have been something I would have said. Second, their negotiation with the SEPA EIS contract trimmed over $1 million off that contract on our behalf. And it just, again, was something that was, showed really finesse and expertise.
I spend my day as a consultant, so I totally value consultants. But I mean, I'll just say very frankly, I was under the understanding that we'd also hired somebody to manage this project from the administration side. So it'd be curious for me to understand a little bit how the work is being shared between consultants and the internal staff.
Yeah, I can comment on that, and I think Scott is here with us tonight. It's very common for us to be hired as external consultants, particularly for agencies that either don't have the full expertise or, as Dan said, the full capacity to manage all the external components of a project and undertaking this complex. And it is also very common for us to be paired with a dedicated project manager inside the agency to help facilitate whether it's local conversations, coordination across departments, coordination across leaders in the city. So that's a very common model for delivery of complex projects. I would also note it was a delight to see my friend Liz Stenning here tonight. I haven't seen Liz for a few years. Last time I saw her, we were working together in Pioneer Square, and just want to note that you have an incredible asset in the Downtown Everett Association, someone who really understands the combination of arts, culture, athletics, and community. And so that's another partner that I look forward to working with here.
Thank you. Any final questions or comments? Okay, thank you. We'll see you back, I guess, next week, and we are going to take a 5-minute break.
President Stonecipher, we do have public comment.
I'm sorry, you're right. My apologies.
So, no,
Please.
we did have an individual that wanted to speak online, but he wants to hold off now, so we just have one individual in chambers. So, Mr. Langus, can you please come to the podium? And please state your full name, city of residence, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Jim Langus. I've changed my remarks after listening for the last 45 minutes. I'd just like to say that Aqua Sox baseball is important. It's a terrific asset for our community, and I'm 100%, I'm all in. We've heard tonight that we have to do the study to come up with some cost calculations and figures, and I think that's one of the things that's really been missing. You know, transparency and outreach and having something to talk about in terms of what the order of cost might be, the order of magnitude is important. And I don't think we have been real transparent and done much outreach. And I'd like to see us, what's missing is the issue of cost. And I have confidence in Dan. I suspect that he has an order of magnitude, and I checked earlier, and order of magnitude is a ballpark. So it's consistent with what we're talking about tonight. I trust Dan and expect that he probably has a ballpark of what this project, both projects could cost. And the same with SOJ. They do this for a living. They know how they build these projects. Now, this is complicated, one of the sites, because You've got import, export, a lot of soil, you've got big buildings to take down, a lot of demolition, environmental issues under the buildings, transportation issues, and all kinds of different issues that you may not have at another facility. But I'd suggest taking a step back. And because the city's been working at this for a year, and I know that they have done some estimates and done some stuff on their own to come up with some order of magnitude cost. And as I said, I believe Dan probably has some numbers in his head. I think we should take a step back and maybe approach it this way. Let's ask the administration to put together a 40, 60, and $80 million outline of what the cost, what the options could be, the assumptions, what it might be for each of those price points. And have them then come back, and because they can do that, give them time to do that, and have them come back and talk to you about, for $40 million, here's how we think we can finance it. You know, here for 60, for 80. And when SOJ is done with their report, whenever that time will be, whenever we let that award, they're going to come up with a number that's somewhere going to be in that sphere. It's going to be close to one of those numbers. So it isn't going to be much different 6 months from now or 3 months from now when they come up with that number. It'll be more fine-tuned, of course, than just using a 40, 60, and $80 million number. But let them come back and work with the council and explain to you what it looks like if you have to fund that kind of a project. And then I have two other comments, and I'm going to step away. I think that's one approach, number one. Number two, this is good ownership. We want to keep this ownership in Everett. They're successful. They give back to the community. They're a first-class business, and it's the kind of business you want to have in Everett. And so I think we want to do everything we can to keep them in Everett. They're not asking to build a $60 million ballpark. They just want to keep baseball in Everett. That's coming from other places. They're not promoting that. And last, I'd like to ask the mayor and Dan, who are working this hard, and I know that they've had some fixation at times on this particular plan that they're working on. What I'd like to ask them is this. We may learn that in the community that people are going to say, hey, we can't afford the taxes. We don't want to sell the event center, which I understand is on the table. What's going to happen with other projects that we have that are unfunded? What's going to happen with some other places that we need to put our dollars? Are we putting all our eggs in one basket? And we may have to turn away from this expensive project and go to Plan B. And at that time, I would hope that Dan and the mayor would say, hey, keeping baseball in Everett is really important, and we're going to help fund this project at Funko Field. We're going to step up and continue to find the resources to help baseball and keep baseball in Everett. That's what the mayor wanted in the first place. So thank you very much for the opportunity to visit.
Thank you.
That concludes our public comment.
That's it. Okay, thank you. Thank you. We'll see you again. We're going to take a 5-minute break, and then we'll be back for budget.
sure.
Yeah. Okay, the city council is back from our break, and we're ready to go on to our public hearing. Item 19 is Council Bill 2310-55, first reading, adopt an ordinance appropriating the budget for the city of Everett for the year 2024 in the amount of $746,730,743. That's a lot of sevens. Third and final reading will be on November 29th. And so now I'll open the public hearing. The public hearing will remain open until the third and final reading. And we have Susie Haugen here and Heidi Berlantes to help us understand what we're looking at.
Yes, Council President, would you mind if I just gave a really quick response to the conversation earlier about Waste Motel, just to let council know, just sort of because of the urgency of it?
Yes, please.
That community development staff again reached out tonight. They have done it before, but reached out again tonight to remind residents of their rights to stay in the motel. They've spoken with resident, confirmed the community is aware that they won't be evicted at midnight. Staff shared our commitment to get them new and hopefully better permanent homes, connections to community services that will give them the best quality of life moving forward. So just wanted to let you know that happened earlier tonight, so.
Very
thanks.
good. Thank you for that follow-up. Very prompt.
Thank you very much, and good evening. Tonight is the first of 3 planned budget hearings on the proposed 2024 operating budget. We'll start with overview information on the citywide expenditures budget and then present highlights on the expenditure changes from the original 2023 budget on a fund-by-fund basis. I'll take a brief pause at the end of each fund for questions as we move through the slides. After tonight, we have 2 additional budget hearings scheduled for November 15th and November 29th, and we'll bring in department heads to address follow-up questions as needed. Heidi and I will be sharing the briefing tonight. I'll present the general government funds, and Heidi will present the non-general government funds. So before we get started, I'd like to orient you to the basis for the budget comparisons in this briefing. As in prior years, we are presenting the difference between the 2023 original budget and the 2024 proposed budget. We use the 2023 original budget as the basis rather than the amended budget because the amended budget contains significant amounts of reappropriations that tend to distort the year-over-year comparison. With that said, all 2023 mid-year changes that will continue on to next year are included in the 2024 proposed budget amounts and appear as increases. In particular, you'll see occurrences of labor cost changes relating to market rate position, upgrades, and position reclasses due to changes in work assignments, which were discussed during budget amendments number 1 and 2 this year. As you know, the city has experienced a high degree of turnover in the last couple of years due to retirements and losses to other entities. Recruitment and retention have been very challenging because the market for skilled government workers is so competitive now. This is of concern because the city cannot deliver services without skilled workers. So in an effort to improve the city's standing, compensation levels for key positions throughout all departments were reviewed relative to our peers, and changes were made where necessary. In addition, one of the city's ongoing commitments to finding and implementing efficiencies in our operations, departments look for opportunities to reorganize job responsibilities as turnover occurs or as community needs evolve. At times, this has resulted in existing staff taking on higher level duties that required position upgrades. The 2024 proposed citywide budget is $438.8 million. This chart presents the budget distribution based on priority area. The city's housing, transportation, and infrastructure priority is the largest, with a combined budget of $192.7 million. This is not surprising, as our regional water and sewer utility is included in this group. The utility serves a population of more than 600,000 a population of more than 600,000 for water services and 160,000 for sewer services, far more than the population of Everett. If we were just looking at the general government expenditures, public safety would be at the top spot with more than 58% of the total allocation. Next in line on a citywide basis is Safe Community. The 2024 proposed budget is $129.7 million. Responsive and Responsible Government is third with a proposed budget of $73.1 million. Economic and Cultural Vitality is next at $33.9 million. And we finish up with Engaged and Informed Community at $9.4 million. Table on this slide shows the change in the expenditure budget by fund type. Starting with the general government, which includes core services such as police, fire, parks, and the library and streets, as well as support departments, we have $11.6 million increase or 7.5% proposed for 2024. Major cost drivers include jail fees, workers' compensation costs, property insurance costs, and labor costs. Special revenue funds are growing by $3.8 million or 7.8%. Special revenue funds include our capital reserves, rainy day fund, EMS, CDBG, and CHIP, among a group of small reserve funds for the park and the library as examples. Growth in special revenue funds includes additional grant funding proposed in the lodging tax fund, transfers to the general fund from the rainy day, animal shelter reserve, and permit development fee funds, and labor costs in EMS. The governmental debt service fund is declining by $500,000 or 18.2%. This is in line with the debt service schedules for the city's outstanding general obligation bonds, which include the 2012 and 2019 bond issues. Both are related to the Angel of the Winds Arena and Conference Center. The 2024 proposed enterprise fund budget is $123.7 million lower than the original 2023 budget. Enterprise funds include our water and sewer utility, solid waste, transit, Everpark Garage, and golf. The reduction is primarily due to the $100 million revenue debt issue that was budgeted in 2023. We didn't issue $100 million. A review of the projects actually lowered that bond issue down to about $49.2 million in the end, but the budget amount was originally for $100 million. We have no plans to issue revenue debt in 2024, so this is a major change between the years. A reduction in transfers to construction fund accounts account for the remainder of the change. Internal service funds, which include self-insurance, health benefits, motor vehicles, technology, and telecommunications reserves, are proposed to increase by $4.9 million. Most of the change here is due to higher property insurance premiums, workers' compensation costs, HMA Legacy and Kaiser health insurance plans, and labor costs. And trust funds, which include our Left One Police and Fire pension funds, are decreasing by $400,000 or 8.4%. The expenditures are based on actuarial recommendations for pension and medical benefits that are anticipated to be paid out on an annual basis. The general fund contribution to the pension funds was suspended for 23 and 24 as budget balancing measures. The remainder of the slides tonight provide additional detail on the proposed budget changes on a fund-by-fund basis. The information will focus on changes that are unique to each department and do not include the impacts of COLA and changes to benefit costs that are common to all operating departments. The proposed 2024 legal department budget is $505,000 or 10.5% higher than the original 2023 budget. The addition of a city attorney and reclass and upgrade of positions were approved in budget amendment number 2 of this year. New changes proposed for 24 include an increase in seasonal pay for the intern position in the prosecutor's office and a net decrease in M&O. Changes to M&O include the addition of a new software service that monitors insurance requirements in city contracts. that is offset by a reduction in professional services for indigent defense. The indigent defense budget was higher in 2023 due to the grant that was received this year for social worker support that is not in the 2024 budget. However, we were recently notified that we will be getting that grant again in 2024, so you can expect to see that in the first budget amendment of next year.
Do we ask questions as we go
Sure.
along? Great. In the goals and work plans, it mentions increased support for domestic violence, survivors of domestic violence, including advocating for increased domestic violence services in the prosecutor's office and police department. Would additional FTEs be needed to meet that work goal?
No additional FTEs have been requested.
Okay. Thanks. That's all.
The administration budget is proposed to increase by $464,000. The staffing changes listed here occurred this year and were approved in Budget Amendment Number 2, including the addition of a Government Affairs Director and half of a Labor and Administrative Services Director. There was also a reclass of an existing position. New for the proposed 2024 budget is a $6,000 reduction in administration's travel budget that reflects less anticipated travel expenditures next year. The municipal court budget is proposed to increase by $164,000. In municipal court, we have an increase of .05 FTE judicial assistant, which happened this year, and a $3,000 reduction in the uniform budget that is proposed for 2024. The human resources budget is proposed to increase by $174,000 in '24. Human resources underwent a reorganization this year that included the addition of a .5 labor and administrative services director, an assistant human resources director, the reduction of a human resources business analyst position, and a reclass of positions to reflect changes in work assignments.
Great. Under workload measures, it's showing a pretty high increase in the number of protected leave applications processed from 2021 estimated through this next year. I'm curious why such a high, 140, which seems like a lot to me. Why such a steep increase? And then also, is this putting a lot of pressure on other employees to cover sick leave? And what's the impact to staff for that?
Yeah, we have Candy here, so we'll let her respond to that.
That's a great question, and you are 100% on track with that question. The differences in the law has changed to where we now have not only the federal law, but we also have the Washington Paid Family Medical, and we are different at the city of Everett versus most other cities because we actually we're self-insured for that. So it does create, it's a great benefit to our employees because they are able to, instead of applying for that benefit through the state, they actually apply for that through the city and it's put right on their paycheck. So that does increase, I believe, the number of leave requests that we do receive at the city. I think that you've also seen changes in law and presumptive cases for L&I, and we run those L&I concurrently with our paid family medical leave as well as the federal family leave laws. So I can't tell you exactly why, but I do believe that it's a combination of those three variables.
Great. And I'm all for workers taking leave. They deserve it and earn it. I'm worried, though, that if there are some extended leaves by certain positions, it's putting pressure on other positions to pick up workloads that they might not be getting compensated for, or just stress management and workload management in general.
Yeah, you are completely correct with that. We try to help those departments out. HR does try to work with the departments. Sometimes we bring in temporary help. When that is the case, we'll hire what's called day laborers or interns if we can, bring in those, or volunteers where we can, but generally that's not what we can do, but we will, if we can, backfill or try to assist in other ways.
Great.
The other thing that happens is we're just slower.
Yeah.
I mean, and so we, as it was stated in the previous presentation, we're leanly staffed in all of our departments, and that's not a secret. And so when somebody in, purchasing, and this is not the case, but if someone in purchasing is out for extended leave, the other people in that department just can't do as much work, and so it takes longer for all of those activities to happen. And so we're just slower. So when people complain about how slow government it is because we are leanly staffed, and when somebody's out sick, then the work often just doesn't get done.
Great. A couple more questions. I would like to see numbers for, where am I? Also under workload measures, it talks about the number of workers' compensation claims received, but I'd like to see numbers about how many have been settled and how many continue to be ongoing. It also states a goal for providing council with quarterly wellness survey results, which I'm not understanding the intent on providing those to us, and it seems like additional work that might not necessarily be necessary. And then under budget changes, it mentions the elimination of an equity manager, which I'm concerned about, so I was hoping you could speak to that.
That was my next.
Oh, great.
Absolutely. So I think that's the next slide, yes. So this budget also proposes to consolidate the leadership and coordination of the city's equity work to the Communications and Engagement Department. And while the city's commitment to equity is the responsibility of every department, consolidating the leadership and communications will expand the resources available to help move these efforts forward.
Is that position currently filled?
It is the equity position, it is not. There was a retirement.
So the work is shared by two individuals in the communications team, Simone Tarver and Nick Shakirik. They are, obviously they have other duties that are part of their full-time jobs. Our equity manager retired.
Okay.
And every time somebody leaves the city, we try to reorganize and make ourselves as efficient as possible, because we always have to reduce the budget every year. And so we had passion and expertise in the engagement department, and they've been active members of the internal engagement team that focuses on equity and kind of coaches all of our departments on equity work. And so they were willing to take that work on as well.
Great, thank you. Councilor Vogel.
To add on to that, do we also have a consultant that is part of this team?
Yeah, so there's been a consultant hired to, and I think that's this year, I don't know what is budgeted next year, so you might have that detail, but there's, that's providing expertise, sorry, it's late, to our team to make sure that we're kind of following best practices, but it's not a substantial contract. I don't.
Okay, thank you.
So we have a net $5.8 million reduction in the non-departmental budget. Changes include a $1.3 million increase in jail fees due to a combination of fee increases and growth in activity. There is a $1.7 million increase in the general government's contribution to the self-insurance funds to cover rising costs associated with property insurance, tort claims, and workers' compensation claims. A $442,000 increase in the contribution to the vehicle replacement reserve. A $100,000 increase for human needs grants, which will be covered by a transfer from the COVID relief fund. These increases are offset by a few significant reductions, the largest of which is a reduction in the labor contingency line item. Recall that all of the general government labor contracts had not been settled by the time the 2023 budget was balanced, so we had an abnormally large set aside to cover for the changes in those collective bargaining agreements once they were settled. In addition, the annual contribution to CIP1 was suspended as a balancing measure. That contribution is planned to be included in the general obligation bond issue that is anticipated for early 2025, which will cover a portion of the Edgewater and Merrill Ring Creek Bridge replacements, the Eclipse Mill Park and Lowell Riverfront Trail improvements, and the EMB remodel. Staying with non-departmental, 009, we have the addition of the Alliance for Affordability dues. We also have proposed contribution increases to the facilities maintenance, technology, and telecommunications reserves to accommodate rising costs in those areas. We have an increase in the elections and voter registration budget based on anticipated ballot measures, as well as higher voter turnout in a presidential election year. And finally, there is a $50,000 reduction in funding for the VOA Senior Center management fee, which is in alignment with the management contract. Councilmember Ryan.
Thank you. So it's my understanding that we're also deferring contributions to the left 1, left 2s, is that correct?
The annual contribution to the left 1 pension fund, not left 2, but our left 1 pension fund, yes, is proposed to be suspended for 2024.
So I see it's listed here that there is a contribution amount of $355,433.
Are you looking at the change, year-over-year change?
It's listed under description on 5-36, page 5-36.
On the proposed budget? Sorry, I need to see what you're looking at.
So my question is more of, I was curious if it was like a portion of the total amount that should be contributed, and if it is a portion, what should we be contributing?
Oh, okay, so there are other funds that actually, that are aside from our annual contribution, just from general fund dollars. These are pass-through funds that come from the outside and pass through the general fund. The reason why they're passing through is an accounting change that happened a couple of years ago that, where we used to post them directly into the pension funds. Now we have to run them through the general fund. That includes the fire premium tax that goes to the fire pension fund, and that's about $200,000. And then we have a little over $100,000 more between the two funds for the Medicare D rebates that we get. So those are aside from our actuarially suggested contribution. And remember that our actuaries are looking at our fund and our spend, and they're targeting a fully funded pension funds by the year 2030. So that has been the target date for many, many years. And the annual contribution is just between the two funds for 2024 that we are suspending is just under $5 million.
Okay, great, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Vogel.
And then I forgot, and now I remember. Add Alliance for Housing Affordability dues. I know that we've been paying that, and it was like within the deep, dark recesses of CDBG type funds. And so now, can you just explain that?
Certainly.
How that works?
So when the city became partners with this, this group and started paying dues, the dues were paid out of Fund 198, which is our CDBG fund. And upon review, we think it's just more appropriate for the general fund to pay for those dues rather than CDBG. So we are moving that cost out of CDBG and into our non-departmental department.
Well, that makes sense. Thank you.
There you go. Still funded, just different.
Councilmember Ryan.
Thank you. There's also the line item for the police property room at almost $125,000, and it's my understanding, well, We allocated $400,000 for the design through ARPA dollars for moving that, so and that was almost a year ago now, so I'm curious why we're still there.
There's a significant remodel that needs to be undertaken in our, the Comeback building, which is where they intend to move that operation to. They're currently in design, as I understand for that. There will be plans and systems ordinance coming forward for construction to do the remodel. As you know, these things take time. And so I don't personally have a understanding of the time, but we have Bob Leonard here who should be able to give us some indication.
Yeah, Bob Leonard, Parks and Facilities. But Susie's absolutely correct. We are closing in. We do expect to have our design completed shortly, and council should be seeing in plans and systems ordinance coming forward for funding the construction. We are currently still in the building and leasing that space, so we do have those costs to incur, but we are moving along and should be into construction shortly.
The Finance Department budget is proposed to grow by $354,000. The staffing addition of an accounting technician occurred this year. That position was added to accommodate the work associated with the new BIA in Everett. We also reclassed two positions to reflect revised work assignments, and for 2024, we will reduce our differential paid budget, which was higher in 2023 to cover a bank buyout for the retirement of a long-tenured employee.
Councilmember Ryan.
I just want to give a shout out to performance measurements that shows the Standard & Poor's rating, and it's just A's and A+s all across the board, so very well done. Thank you.
Thank you. We do work really hard at that, by the way. The information technology budget is proposed to increase by $450,000 in 2024. IT had a variety of reclass and market rate upgrades in its staff position this year based on an in-depth review of the department's staffing assignments and challenges in recruiting and retaining qualified team members. For 2024 budget, we are proposing to increase IT's overtime to align with recent activity and reduce the differential pay budget based on the staffing changes where it will no longer be necessary.
Councilmember Wright.
Like that Susie just looks at me like, what you got? I wanted to give a shout out to the great work that IT did for the Everett at Work app. I know that was a huge undertaking, and I think the app's fantastic. Everybody should totally download it and use it. It's great. I did have a question. The budgeted expenditures shows a huge decrease in cybersecurity. It had been funded at $175,000 in the 2022 budget, and now it's nothing. But that seems like a pretty important thing for the city to keep our information safe.
That was just a project, though, yeah. That was a new project that was funded in our non-departmental fund, and we still have our efforts, very stepped-up efforts on cybersecurity, but this was just the acquisition of some new, I believe it's software that we got to do that.
Okay.
It was just another software working in the background, keeping us safe, is how it was explained to me.
Great,
So.
thanks.
Okay, the communications and engagement budget is proposed to increase by $148,000. Communications and engagement has undergone a couple of significant changes in 2023, and there are more proposed for 2024. After bringing engagement into the communications department this year, it became clear early on that the work of the community engagement and the city's communications is so closely interconnected that consolidating these functions under one director would promote the most cohesive and effective service delivery. This consolidation allows the city to apply this department's collective resources to lead and coordinate the city's equity work, as we discussed previously, and the goal is ensure that Diversity, equity, and inclusion principles remain a top priority in every department, guiding how we do business both internally and in how we serve the community. Staffing changes proposed for '24 include the addition of a .5 multimedia communications coordinator to provide needed support for Everett TV and video and photography projects, and the increase of a .8 FTE of communications and marketing manager, which was previously allocated .2 to communications and .8 to economic development. This position is now focusing on managing media relations and the city's social media presence. The staffing changes for next year net to a total of $36,000. We're also proposing to add $6,000 in seasonal labor to assist with the workload. This is actually a high school intern, so this person will have the opportunity to get some really valuable real-life work experience. And the last item for communications is a small bump to M&O for professional services for graphic design. The Community Planning and Economic Development budget is proposed to grow by just under $1.3 million. There have been numerous changes this year, and there are more proposed for 2024. For community development, we added 5 grant-funded positions in 2023, 4 social services positions, 2 of which are embedded in the fire department and 2 at the library, and an administrative assistant who will support grant management in this department. We also have changes relating to the city's support of the CDBG program. Due to the rising cost of labor and the decline in grant funds, we need to move additional labor costs into the general fund to avoid exceeding the CDBG's program's cap on administrative expenses. The FTE count will not change. We are exchanging a portion of a manager position for portions of support positions to lower the administrative costs charged to this grant. In planning, we added a planning and communication engagement coordinator to assist with outreach related to the comp plan update. And in 2024, 1 assistant planner is proposed also to assist with the comp plan update, and a half year of an administrative assistant to provide overlap for an upcoming retirement. Also new for '24, in economic development, we are proposing to increase the existing communications and marketing manager position from a .8 to a .85 FTE and reduce M&O by $6,000 due to less anticipated travel in 2024. The engineering and public services budget is proposed to increase by $915,000. In 2023, positions were reclassed and upgraded based on HR and department review. For '24, seasonal labor was exchanged for a regular FTE, and a supervisor position was exchanged for a technician position. The goal of these staffing changes is to continue to improve permit turnaround time. Also in '24, traffic engineering is proposed to receive a limited term position to allow for overlap and training to cover an anticipated retirement.
Thanks. Under the work plan, it talks about completing a digital transformation by revamping the permitting process and service upgrades with staff hardware upgrades. Is this going to be, I didn't see it in the IT's work plan that they would be working on this. I'm curious if IT is going to be supporting these efforts, and if so, do they have the personnel available to take on a project of this size?
My understanding is that this work is almost, if not complete. I know that all of the bigger equipment has been purchased, and their permitting system has been upgraded. So I think that the mayor would like to comment.
Yeah, I'll just say, just like all departments, every department would love more staff. And the way IT manages these kind of project workloads, because they'll do a special project for a department that requires a whole bunch of energy. And so they just kind of stagger them, just like parks and facilities. We can't manage all new projects at the same time. So think of it as like there's like an internal IT project management team, and they're doing this work for a while, and then next year they're going to be doing other work. But yeah, it'd be great if we could just hire additional staff every time we have a new project.
Thanks.
Engineering is also receiving an additional $6,700 in overtime and $21,000 in M&O based on a review of their operational needs. The Animal Services Department budget is proposed to increase by $366,000. Staffing changes occurred this year to expand capacity in veterinary services, which is being supported by the shelter's very successful fundraising program. This change was approved in Budget Amendment Number 2. The department is also exchanging an animal control officer for a shelter volunteer and foster supervisor. The animal control officers have historically spent a portion of their workload assisting in the shelter, and hiring a volunteer and foster supervisor will enable more volunteers to be brought into the assist shelter staff and for more animals to be cared for in foster homes. The new position will allow the ACOs to spend significantly more of their time in the field providing animal control services while improving animal care and staff support. The Emergency Operations Center was previously a division of the Fire Department, overseen by a Fire Division Chief. In 2023, the Emergency Management Department was created as approved in Ordinance Number 3944-23. Since transferring responsibilities, an Emergency Management Director was added to oversee this new department, and the Administrative Coordinator was transferred into this department that had been previously working on in this function in fire. The police department budget is proposed to grow by $7.9 million in 2024. All of the staffing additions occurred this year and were approved in Budget Amendment Number 2. These changes include 8 police officers and a police lieutenant. 7 of the officers are supported by the COPS grant, and 1 officer and the lieutenant will serve as backfill for the officers that will be leading the new police academy. The academy will be reimbursing the city for the officers' compensation. The public disclosure specialist was added to accommodate the increase in public disclosure requests stemming from the body-worn camera program, and the wellness coordinator was added to support and oversee the city's existing wellness tools such as the employee wellness visit program, peer support, police chaplaincy program, and the employee assistance program. New for '24, we have increases to overtime, other pay, and uniforms totaling $255,000. These changes are based on operational needs and provisions in the union contracts. Also proposed for 2024 is $90,000 for the lateral incentive program, which is intended to help recruitment efforts and keep the city competitive with peer agencies. The fire department budget is proposed to increase by $2.4 million. In fire, we have a few changes that occurred this year, including removing the fire division chief position that was formerly in charge of emergency management, and transferring the administrative coordinator who was dedicated to that function to a new department, as I previously mentioned. New for '24, we're transferring 0.3 FTE of an assistant fire chief into fire from EMS based on a review of where this position is spending time and effort. And there's also a $654,000 increase in overtime, differential and other pay, and a $19,000 decrease in the uniform budget, which was raised in 2023 to accommodate the turnover in new hires.
Is that it for fire?
That is, well, until we get to EMS.
Okay. So I'm seeing the increase in overtime labor line item at 381,000. I had brought this up last year, that last year's line item was 684,000. I'm also seeing no increases in FTEs. And even in 2020, there had been 130.7 FTEs, so there's been a decrease of 7 over the years, but the line item for overtime keeps going up. So I'm curious what plans there are to reconcile that.
Candy might have more. I just talked to the fire chief about this today, and we are actively recruiting or trying to onboard 22 firefighters. And we have authorized for them to hire them early, I guess is the way to do it. They're not new positions, but we're hiring early, whereas we used to wait for people to retire and leave the city, and then we'd replace them, and then you have to train. And so while they're going through training, or if someone's out sick, then there's not enough people to cover, and so then you have overtime. And so by hiring early for anticipated retirements, it's kind of a risk that we could be overstaffed in the fire department, over budget of how many firefighters we are budgeting for, but we're doing it kind of to balance that overtime. And Candy, did I cover that accurately? Okay, thanks.
I'd also like to comment on the staffing. We did create the new emergency management department, and so 2 staff members, those positions were moved into that department, so it's not really a reduction in fire. Also, perhaps what you're noticing is until maybe 5 or 6 years ago, the general fund was heavily subsidizing our EMS program. And so we were staffing all of the basic life support personnel in the fire department as opposed to an EMS, where they should have been staffed, and even division chiefs in charge of EMS was in the regular fire. And so we've made a concerted effort to look at the time and effort spent by throughout the fire department. So the administrative, a portion of administrative staff is now allocated to EMS, and all of the firefighters that staff the basic life support program are now moved out to EMS. And so I don't think you're really seeing a staffing reduction in fire. You're just seeing a shift of where we're funding it based on where time and effort is actually being spent. And then we also actually increased the fire department staffing, and this is in the EMS fund, which we haven't gotten to yet, but we added, I believe, 4 paramedics and an administrative coordinator to EMS to help relieve the high call volume there. So they have actually received a recent increase. If you look at the department as a whole, as opposed to fire being separate from EMS, they kind of think of themselves as a whole.
Sure, thanks.
Councilmember Vogely.
Sorry, I thought you said Zarlingo.
Nope, Vogely.
But it doesn't look like you have anything to say right now. I think I'm also remembering in like 2018 or 19, we had the shift on a ballot to pay differently. So is that coming in for EMS versus regular fire stuff? Am I just misremembering
There's always,
something?
so EMS does a levy lid
Yeah,
lift every 6-7 years, something like that, and so that's what you're remembering.
Fair enough.
They go through that, yeah.
Just trying to muddy the waters.
The facilities and property management budget is proposed to increase by $434,000 next year. In 2023, there were 2 position reclasses and 1 market rate upgrade. In '24, facilities is proposed to receive a $4,600 increase in differential pay and $11,000 increase in M&O to help cover the impact of inflation on operations. The Parks and Community Services Department budget is proposed to increase by $778,000 in '24. In '23, there were position reclasses and market rate upgrades that were approved in Budget Amendment Number 2. And in '24, we're proposing to transfer .05 FTE Assistant Parks Director from Municipal Arts back to Parks and transfer out .05 FTE Parks Director to Motor Vehicles, resulting in a $1,300 net decrease in cost. We are also providing a $4,600 increase in differential pay and $4,800 increase in overtime for parks next year. The library budget is proposed to increase by $726,000 in '24. Changes include a .1 FTE increase to an existing circulation assistant 2 position and an additional $19,000 in the circulation assistant shelver budget. An increase of $175,000 to M&O is also included in '24 to cover the security services agreement that was approved this year.
Can I ask a question about the library,
Absolutely.
please? Thank you. Ooh, it is late. Okay. So we did receive a letter from the Board of Trustees earlier with the request to open the library back to full-time, both branches, 7 days per week. I would like to have that be a goal for the city for sure. Looking through the documents, I'm seeing on budgeted expenditures over time that it's been an increase of about $1 million from 2022 to 2024. And it sounds like a funny question because it's all itemized right here, but what is that being spent on? I'm curious, but there hasn't been any new FTEs added to support the library opening for more days. I'm not sure if that was clear. I'm so tired.
It's okay. When you're talking about the $1 million increase in overtime, are you talking about?
Not in overtime. The budgeted expenditures from 2022 to the proposed budget is increasing by about $1 million. However, the FTE count isn't increasing at all. But the library's requesting more, like 8.4 FTEs or something to open the library full-time. So with a large line increase from 2022 to 2024, I was curious if you happen to know why they haven't hired any new FTEs with that extra money. Because I'm seeing administration, the fund for administration go from increase about $400,000.
So in total, the change is $726,000. A lot of what you're seeing, and this goes for all of the operating departments, is the original 2023 budget, because we didn't have settled contracts, they didn't contain the COLA for 2023, which, because inflation was so steep in '23, it was over 10%, that is part of that number, it's the 2023 COLA, then compounded with the proposed 2024 COLA. So that's a lot of it, and that's, department-wide. So that's, all of the ASME, there's a proposed COLA for the appointees in the library. They have some of those too. And so that's a lot of the change that you're seeing there. We have not included the additional FTEs to return the library to a 7-day-a-week operation at this time. The city's finances are just in we're just in a position where there is no money to do that. That is something that, is certainly worthy of discussion among council as to when we're looking and discussing moving into next year about possible revenue options and what we might like to see happen with those revenue options, but there simply just was not funding to make that leap back to 7 days a week at this time.
Thanks. Yeah, so the letter that we received had mentioned too, just the return on investment for when the library is open and how much, excuse me, the city gets back for having their doors open more often. So I understand that we can't fully fund the request, but I would be curious, I think Abby's provided this information before as well, of what would it take for one day to be open? Because there's 3 days total, both branches for 2 days, 1 day, one branch for 2 days, so 3 days total. How many FTEs would it take to open a day, 2 days, 3 days, to incrementalize our way to being fully open?
So unfortunately, I don't have that information
That's
with
fine.
me. I have what it would cost to do both libraries for 7 days, and that's about a little over $700,000. We could do the Evergreen-only library for 7 days for about $470,000, or the main library for, oh, wait a minute. I gotta make sure I'm like, okay, or the main library for about $321,000. So I don't have just per day, but I could certainly work with
Oh,
Abby
that
to.
is the answer to my question, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Would you mind emailing,
No,
and if there's any additional FTEs that go with those requests as well? Please. And thank you.
Also, I will also look, because I know that Abby and Co. have, that's company, sorry, not a name. Abby and company have put a lot of that stuff together. It's probably what you have, but I'll also look, because there's numbers.
Absolutely.
I think for the library too, it's worth noting that it's a little different than the rest of our departments. We fund the library at a certain level, and the Board of Trustees has an opportunity to evaluate where the priorities are with that funding. To this point, they've felt that there wasn't enough funding to expand library hours, but, and what we've funded in terms of the labor increases that Susie mentioned, and also a priority for security officers as well. I want to say we did a budget amendment for 200,000 or
About 175.
about 175, and still evaluating whether that's enough in terms of safety and security for both the employees and the patrons at the library, so.
I just have one quick library question. So the embedded social worker is not in their budget?
No, that's in the community development budget, and right now there's 2 of them actually, and they're supported by the COVID relief funding at this time.
Great, just wanted to double check, thanks.
Yeah.
One more addition, please. I would also like to request, and it might be a decision that the Board of Trustees would have to make as well, if any of the special trust funds that the library has, because some of them have ongoing contributions from a trust, if the library would be willing to take a look at the totality of their trust funds to see if there's funding available in those that they'd be willing to match or help contribute as well. Thanks.
Okay, the municipal arts department budget is proposed to increase by $89,000 in '24. In '23, we reclassed a part-time administrative assistant position to project coordinator as a result of some changes in duties that she was taking on. And we're also proposing to increase the FTE from part-time to full-time next year. You know, this position supports our special events like Sorticulture and 4th of July and in wintertime and so on. We also have the other half of the transfer back of .05 FTE, Assistant Parks Director to Parks. Municipal Arts is also proposed to receive $2,500 increase in M&O based on provisions in the EPAC management contract. The conference center budget is proposed to decrease by $574,000 in 2024. As I mentioned earlier, the debt service on the outstanding 2012 bonds will be lower in 2024 as payments ramp down according to the debt service schedule. And with streets, we come to the end of the general government funds. The street department budget is proposed to increase by $329,000 in 2024. In 2023, we had a work assignment change and a market rate position upgrade. For '24, we're proposing a $13,000 increase in overtime and a $3,000 increase in M&O. And with that, if there's no questions on streets, I'll pass it on to Heidi, who will go over the non-general government funds.
Just a couple more slides. All right, we begin non-general government with our Motor Vehicle and Equipment Replacement Fund 126. They have a budget decrease of $297,000 or 8.3%. The decrease is due to a reduction in the number of vehicles and equipment that are scheduled to be replaced next year. Moving on to Lodging Tax Fund 138, we have an increase of $215,000 for a total expenditure of $1,010,000. This is the estimated 23 ending fund balance. This follows the agreed upon plan to limit the annual appropriation to the estimated available fund balance from the prior year. Lodging tax allocations include $560,000 for external projects and event grants, $175,000 for tourism promotion, $175,000 for internal projects and events such as Sorticulture, 4th of July, Jetty Island Days, and Wintertide. And lastly, we have $100,000 for Event Center debt support. Real Property Acquisition Reserve Fund 145 consolidates the financial transactions related to general government real property. Fund 145 has two separate subfunds, one for real property acquisition and the other for street and alley vacation-funded capital projects. The table on the right-hand side of this slide reflects the proposed budget for real property operations only. Recommended street and alley vacation funded projects are listed on the left, and these will need to be approved separately through a plans and systems ordinance. We'll also be bringing forward a reappropriation request for any unfinished projects in Budget Amendment number 1 next year. Emergency Medical Services Fund 153 has an increase of $1.2 million or 6.4%. 2023 mid-year changes include reclasses for 2.3 FTEs that reflect work assignments or align with department needs. The 2024 key changes include impacts from the 23-24 labor agreement. This includes a $390,000 increase in overtime, $201,000 increase in differential pay, a $70,000 increase in other pay, and a $43,000 increase in the uniform budget. We also have a transfer out of 0.3 FTE Assistant Fire Chief to the Fire Department, and this is based on a review of where this position is spending its time and effort. In the Community Development Block Grant Fund 198, we see the other side of the transfers to and from the Community Planning and Economic Development Department. These transfers net to zero change in FTEs. Moving on to the Water and Sewer Utility Fund 401. This year, there was a transfer of 0.5 FTE Environmental Health and Safety Manager from Utilities. This position's work is citywide, and it should be included in the standard cost allocation plan for HR rather than charged directly to utilities. We also had several positions reclassed based on changing work assignments and some upgrades to align with market rates. Fund 401 has a decrease in proposed expenditures of $116 million or 49.8%. The reduction is primarily due to no planned water and sewer revenue bond issuances in 2024 for their utility capital program, and there's also less transfers for construction projects as a whole. Proposed staffing changes in the Water and Sewer Utility Fund include 8 treatment plant operators in training, 3 for the water filtration plant, and 5 for the water pollution control facility. Retirements and staff turnover have been a growing trend in the water industry over the past few years. The ability for the Utilities Department to recruit certified operators has been increasingly difficult due to less certified operators within the industry. It takes approximately 3 years of on-the-job training and progressive certifications to become an Operator 3. These additions will ensure that our plants are staffed 24/7 to meet city's level of service goals, daily operational needs, and provide adequate time to prepare for the next round of retirements. Staffing changes also include one associate engineer PE, and they will be dedicated to surface water project delivery. There's an additional 0.5 FTE utility maintenance technician that is planned to be hired during the second half of next year. And this is needed due to a 25% increase in the number of lift stations. There's also additional lift stations that are currently in the planning and design phase, and they're expected to be in service within the next 1 to 2 years. We also have a reduction to seasonal budgeted FTE by 1.5. There's a $338,000 increase to overtime, $125,000 increase for differential pay, and a $25,000 increase to their uniform budget. The solid waste utility funds budget is proposed to increase by $1.1 million, or 48.7%. Key changes include a 2023 mid-year reclass of 0.20 FTE to reflect work assignments. There's also a $1 million increase to M&O to perform ongoing environmental monitoring for groundwater and landfill gas at the Everett landfill riverfront site. We also have a reduction in seasonal labor pay of $20,000. The 2024 proposed FTE budget for Everett Transit is $161. This is an increase of 15.02 from the 2023 original budget. The increase is comprised of 2023 mid-year changes. Among them are 6 bus operators and 3 security officers as listed on this slide. Additionally, 3.05 FTEs were reclassed to reflect work assignments. Proposed additions in 2024 include 2 bus operators, also 1 vehicle electronics technician that will perform mechanical and maintenance work on Transit's increasing fleet of electric buses. There's also an increase to overtime of $664,000, an increase to differential pay by $54,000 for anticipated retirements, and an increase to the uniform budget by $9,000. And as you can see on the table to the right, 2024 proposed expenditures decrease by $9.3 million, or 19.9%, compared to the 23 original budget. And that's primarily due to no planned bus purchases in 2024. But that is expected to ramp back up in 25. There's a $733,000 or 15% increase proposed to the golf budget. This includes a $465,000 increase to M&O. $300,000 of this amount are for roof replacements and cart paths. These will be paid by facility improvement fees, and that's a $3 per round is how we generate those facility improvement fees. We also have an $81,000 increase to the golf management fee, and this aligns with our contract provisions. A $42,000 increase to seasonal pay to meet market rates, and a small increase to overtime.
Heidi, can I ask you a question back on, what was it? On Everett Transit, you mentioned bus purchases. Do those does that not meet our capitalization threshold? Are those run through as expenses?
They do meet our capitalization threshold.
Okay.
Yes, the electric buses are quite expensive.
Okay. So how would that be affecting this budget then?
Because when we purchase them,
Sorry.
governmental accounting, so we purchase them and we're expensing the money, and then we capitalize it after that. And
Okay,
we
so
still
these are
have to-
showing just kind of the cash flow.
Mhm.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
And 501.
We're 501.
See, you learned something new.
All right. The 2024 motor vehicle department budget is proposed to increase by $502,000, or 5.8%. Increases include $11,000 for overtime, $8,000 for seasonal labor, $156,000 for fuel budget, $115,000 for purchase parts, This is mainly due to supply chain issues and continued inflation. There's a transfer out of .05 FTE Assistant Parks and Recreation Director, but there's also a transfer in of .05 FTE Parks and Recreation Director due to anticipated change in oversight. I know that sounds very similar, but essentially we're transferring a Parks Director in of .05 and then eliminating .05 Assistant Parks and Recreation Director. We also see decreases resulting from differential pay in the uniform budget.
And so what's that Parks Director doing in the Motor Vehicles Fund? What's going on there? Lori, is that you?
I'll give
Would
this a
you have
shot.
wanted that?
Well, generally, in previous budget years, that 0.05% was my time. And we decided that it made better sense for the MVD oversight to transfer from me into the Parks and Facilities Department. We originally thought we were going to need both the Parks Director and Assistant Director to provide that level of oversight and support and administrative work. But in looking at it further, after I've been doing it for a couple of years, really, we just need one. And so it made sense for the Park Director to be allocated that percentage instead of my time.
Okay, great, thank you.
And that was the last slide. You know, managing the city's budget is really a year-round effort, but the work certainly intensifies in the summer and in the fall when we're working with administration to produce a balanced budget and build it for review. I just want to take a moment to thank the budget team very much. Heidi Berlantes, as you've seen, our budget manager, and Wei Poon and Yi Lu, who are senior analysts who work so hard throughout the year to provide really sound financial analysts and bring all of the details together. So thank you. And thank you, Wei and Yi. And that concludes the information we have for you tonight. I know that was long, and I appreciate everybody hanging in with us.
We appreciate you hanging in with us.
So we have 2 more hearings after this. I know I have some takeaways from this meeting and an earlier one from Council Vice President Tui. And so as questions occur, it would be of great help if you send us an email, let us know, and then we can prepare information to bring back to the next budget hearing or the one after that. And so looking forward to any follow-up questions that you might have.
Councilmember Vogely.
Sorry, this isn't about the budget, but I did want to mention that I noticed the truck was moved, so thank you.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember.
It's more of a comment, just a request that for next year's first reading of our budget, that we clear the agenda to just focus on the budget. It's the biggest thing we do all year. It's the most important thing that we do, and we should be able to have our full faculties focused on that very critical, sacred, important thing. Thank you.
Yeah, and I won't be here. I mean, it does get compressed this time of year, and then with these other things that came up, perhaps the Thanksgiving week council meeting next year might need to be held, because it just does compress things when you have that, and then you're missing the other one in December. So it's possible that, yeah, those will need to be back on your calendar, because I won't be here. So, yeah, any other questions, we can pass those on to Susie. We're going to extend this public hearing. We will not close it tonight. And then we will move on to the next public hearing, which is item 20, Council Bill 2310-52, third and final reading, adopt an ordinance levying the EMS property taxes for the city of Everett for fiscal property commencing January 1st, 2024, on all taxable property, both real and personal, subject to taxation thereon. I'll now open the public hearing. Angie, do we have anyone signed up to speak on this item?
No, we do not.
Thank you. And Susie and Heidi, do you have any briefing or just here to answer questions?
Just here to answer questions, nothing further prepared.
Thank you. This is our third and final reading, so we will be taking action on this. Do I Are there any questions or comments, or do I hear a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make the motion to close the public hearing.
Second. Thank you. Clerk, will you call the roll on closing the public hearing?
Vice President Tui?
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo?
Yes.
President Stone Cipher?
Yes, and do I hear a motion to adopt the ordinance related to levying the EMS property taxes for 2024?
So moved.
Second.
Any final questions or comments? Councilmember Ryan?
Thank you. Just a, excuse me, just a request to revisit a discussion about a timeline for a potential levy lid lift, because more elections are coming soon. And so there's a lot of ducks that need to be in a row before that to happen. And if it's something the city's serious about considering, we need to start working on that yesterday. Thanks.
Agreed.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Vice President Tui?
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo?
Yes.
President Stone Cipher?
Yes, our last public hearing item is item 21, Council Bill 2310-53, third and final reading. Adopt an ordinance levying the regular property for the city of Everett for fiscal year commencing January 1st, 2024 on all taxable property, both real and personal, subject to taxation thereon. I will now open the public hearing. Angie, is there anyone signed up to speak on item 21?
No, there is not.
Thank you. Do you have anything to add?
Nothing further, thank you.
Thank you. And do we have any questions or comments from council? I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second?
Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Vice President Tui?
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo?
Yes.
President Stone Cipher?
Yes. And do I hear a motion to adopt the ordinance related to levying the regular property for fiscal year 2024?
So moved.
Second?
Any questions or comments? Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Vice President Tui?
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo?
Yes.
President Stone Cipher?
Yes, and with no further business or executive session, we are adjourned.